בחרמון נמס השלג בחצי הלילה, בחרמון זורם לו פלג בחצי הליל. אבא שם על הר השלג בחצי הלילה, שר שירים על נס בפלא עם כל ישראל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. בבקעת תמר פורח בחצי הלילה, הירח שם זורח בחצי הליל. שם אחי ודאי שומע בחצי הלילה את שירנו השמח כאן בישראל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. במדבר הולך החושך בחצי הלילה, שקט הס בארץ גושן בחצי הליל. לדודי עיני נחושת בחצי הלילה, וגם הוא חוגג כמו שכל בית ישראל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. ואני יושב בבית בחצי הלילה, עם נרות וגביע יין בחצי הליל, וכוכב מאיר עיניים בחצי הלילה, לי מוסר ברכת שמיים ולכל ישראל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. שוב צוהל.
Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння, різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар.
Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 970 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again on a Sunday night fundraiser stream yet again. And we have very big news today of Ukraine conducting a massive drone attack on Russia and also another breach of NATO airspace yet again. And it's good to see you all once more.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, as we've been able to get incredibly large news today on all three major fronts of conflict that we are currently seeing at this moment, as the South Korean military has begun to exact military drills in a direct consequence to the North Korean buildups along the militarized zone and the maritime demarcation line to the west of South Korea. We have been able to see that South Korean forces and the South Korean government have considered the situation to be incredibly serious and are beginning to take preemptive actions and measures to be prepared for any kind of eventuality that may occur from the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. At the exact same time, we have been able to hear that the Chinese government is stating that their armed forces need to be ready to act at a moment's notice. We are unsure as to the direct meaning of this statement, but we do believe that there are two different ways that this could be interpreted. Either China will spring forward in immediate preparation to conduct defensive actions in support of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, or they may be preparing to conduct hostile actions against the island of Taiwan, also called the Republic of China, here within the very short time frame of the relative near future. At the exact same time, outside of China and into the area of the Middle East and Eastern Europe, we've been able to see that a massive Ukrainian drone attack has spread its tendrils across the entirety of Western Russia, striking as far north as Nizhny Novgorod and as far east as Yekaterinburg. The drone attack has absolutely wrecked Russian war production abilities, as a major ammunition depot was stricken within the area of Yekaterinburg. A supposed North Korean training base was hit within the area of Oriel, and we were also able to see that another form of munitions manufacturing facility was stricken up in the area of Nizhny Novgorod. We were also able to get a decent amount of video and picture evidence as well from the Russian Federation, showing the drones being engaged by air defense and also hitting several different ground targets. Meanwhile, inside of Ukraine, the Kursk offensive is going very poorly for the Russians, not the Ukrainians, as we have been able to see that a large amount of losses have been inflicted by Ukrainian defensive forces within the area of the Kursk Oblast over a relatively short amount of time, just over the past 24 hours alone. Additionally, we have been able to see that as a direct response of the Ukrainian drone attack, the Russians have launched a counterattack of their own, sending a large number of Shahed 136 drones into the skies of Ukraine, with one of them, for the first time ever, being intercepted and destroyed by a Ukrainian attack helicopter using its main gun. We also were able to hear of an additional violation of NATO airspace near to the area of Romania by another Russian drone near to the port of Izmail. In other news, we've also been able to hear of a major success by the Ukrainian anti-marine efforts, as we have been able to hear from the head of the Roscosmos that the Russian Black Sea Fleet has admitted defeat, limping from the port of Sevastopol for the last time, and now making its permanent basing in the port of Novorossiysk, meaning that the Ukrainians have been able to claim a complete victory over the Black Sea Fleet, forcing them from their original port of Sevastopol and destroying around half of their combat capabilities on surface and under the surface of the waters in the Black Sea. Meanwhile, we have also been able to see that Ukrainian defensive actions have continued on with great zeal over large areas of the front line today, from Vovchansk down to Pokrovsk, and we have also been able to see that within the Middle East, the Israelis are continuing to carry on defensive actions against the Hezbollah forces led by the Iranians inside of Lebanon, as more airstrikes have been conducted on the capital city of Lebanon, Beirut, today. We have also been able to see that due to Israel's request, a second THAAD launcher has been moved into the Middle East, which we were able to get video and picture evidence of today, confirming that the Israelis now have 2 operational THAAD batteries operated by the United States Air Defense Command within this area, of course under CENTCOM, that will be providing additional air defense in the event of an Iranian response to the upcoming Israeli attack. We have a huge...
Man, I'll be honest with you, Enforcer, I'm getting super tired of these really low news days like this, because we're getting to the point where we don't have much to cover anymore, with like so little happening around the world at this point. I'm not sure what we're going to do. We might be out of a job soon.
Man, I mean, you never know. I mean, it's getting slow these days, but no.
I'm just kidding, by the way. Like, it's running off the rails. Like, I'm joking, of course, about that. There's so much going on right now. It's almost overwhelming to keep up with it, and it's all big stuff. Like, none of these stories are small whatsoever. But also, real quick, Enforcer, I just want to mention real fast, because I saw some people asking this. We are running a fundraiser tonight for Nova Ukraine, one that we've run a fundraiser for several times in the past. So once again, they're doing great work in Ukraine, and if you have the ability, please donate as well, because we're going to have another night of almost $3,000 at least being raised to help those in Ukraine. So just want to give a shout out real quick to Nova Ukraine, since we are running the fundraiser. But yeah, man, it's been crazy, like over the last 24 hours, like absolutely insane.
It has been absolutely crazy. And of course, I do have to make a mention that tonight's fundraiser is in support of Nova Ukraine, an amazing nonprofit that we have supported so many times on this channel. We have already reached $990 out of the $3,000 goal that we have tonight. And if we could hit that $3,000 goal with incredible speed and with great revolutionary zeal, and you'll be understanding why I'm saying that here in a second, we will be very appreciative of that, because it would, of course, help out a great deal of people inside of Ukraine that are being supported by Nova Ukraine. And not only that, it will also be helping the Western world to continue to conduct whatever actions possible, even on their smallest levels, to continue to assure victory over the axis of evil that is formed in the modern day, that the Western world is pretty much engaging on all 3 fronts. But moving on from that and into the major news that we have from literally every single corner of the globe today, and I cannot really state this enough. The amount of news that we are getting these days is truly insane. It's something that we have never seen before. It has been unprecedented in the coverage that we have done for about 3 years, and I cannot state that enough, that times now are more interesting and more challenging than they've ever really been. Hopefully we'll be able to step it up to the occasion and really sort of deal with all the problems that we're starting to see around the world. But to bring y'all up to speed a little bit with what's going on in East Asia, I have to be able to lay out a little bit of the story that has preceded this, and then tell y'all what's happening as a response to this. about the course of the last year, we have seen that the Korean Peninsula and its diplomatic relations in between the North and the South have continued to deteriorate for some time. We were able to see that a while ago, private South Korean citizens were deploying balloons filled with USB drives as well as other forms of illegal content into North Korea to try and give North Korean citizens a view into the outside world. This is considered incredibly provocative by the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, which has a very tight control on media and largely only allows domestic media due to the Department of Propaganda and, hang on, let me think. It is the Department of Agitation and Propaganda. Yeah, that's what it's called. It's the DAP. But nevertheless, the DAP controls all media that North Koreans consume inside of the country. And something that is not approved by the DAP is not allowed to be viewed inside of North Korea, which means that every single one of these balloons is illegal contraband. And according to the North Koreans, poisoning the minds of Koreans with filthy Western imperialist propaganda. For this reason, the North Koreans asked the South Koreans to stop these private citizens from conducting these actions. The South Korean government, being a democratic one, opted to not do that, as they said that it would infringe upon the rights of South Korean citizens to stop them from conducting perfectly legal activities. Technically, what they're doing is entirely legal. The North Koreans decided that that was a little bit smart of the South Koreans to say something like that, so the North Koreans then responded with their own balloons. These were filled with turds, and they started to drop them over a large area of South Korea, especially the city of Seoul, which is the capital of South Korea. The South Koreans got very angry about this, and in response, they decided to escalate the matter even further by turning on boomboxes on the South Korean border directed towards North Korea to start playing some of our best beats, like Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas Is You. This has started to anger the...
hell no.
And they did it on repeat. But nevertheless, the North Koreans were incredibly angered by this and decided that they had had enough. And very recently, they actually, as a result of all of these actions, started to blow up the bridges. Oh yeah, I forgot one more extra detail. Not only that, the South Koreans actually apparently sent, according to the North Koreans, a military drone from South Korea into Pyongyang and started to drop propaganda leaflets. We were able to hear from the North Korean government that they apparently managed to shoot down the drone or it crashed, and they were able to confirm due to the debris that it was a South Korean military drone and not a private citizen's drone in South Korea. This escalated the matter to its absolute fever pitch that we had seen at the moment, and the North Koreans destroyed every single crossing, largely bridge crossings, that spanned the entirety of the demilitarized zone, and then started to conduct incredibly provocative and dangerous measures as a result of this, moving 8 artillery brigades into the area along the entire length of the demilitarized zone, meaning that there are several thousand North Korean artillery pieces that are aimed towards South Korea at this moment. And an additional provocative measure that was made was that they were given the order to prepare for firing, meaning that these artillery pieces are only one phone call away from opening fire on South Korea, to let y'all know how close the situation is at this point to a border skirmish at the moment. Not only that, we then saw that the coastal artillery batteries near to the area of the island of Mudo and also along the mainland of South Korea near Cheongsu-ri began to open up and started to aim their artillery pieces towards the island of Yapyeongmyeon, which is a South Korean-controlled island on the southern end of the maritime demarcation line. The South Koreans have now put their military pretty much along the entirety of the MDL and the DMZ on high alert, and we have now started to hear that the South Koreans, in response to the never-ending streams of provocation that are coming from North Korea, are now conducting military drills, unscheduled ones, that are in response to the North Koreans, and of course wanting to assess their combat readiness if a conflict was to begin here within the very near future. And so here's the clip of one of those readiness drills that happened today. And I'm not going to lie.
Man, what the hell is that in the background, man? That's haunting. It sounds like a Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Yeah, beyond the inserted audio, because that's not real audio, by the way, of this, these helicopters are all a part of a mass formation. We don't really know what exactly the readiness side of things they're actually conducting here are, because it's a very wide fleet of different helicopters. We can see what appears to be Cobras, Chinooks, Blackhawks, and other helicopters that are a part of this formation. And we don't really know what part of the drill this is, well, what this drill is really supposed to be emphasizing, but nevertheless, it was an incredibly large helicopter formation that was caught on film, and it does seem as though, from the information that we have at the moment, the South Koreans are largely gearing up to be ready for another DMZ border conflict. The last time that something like this ever happened was during the very early 2000s, before the Sunshine Plan came into being, literally right before the Sunshine Plan came into being. And for this reason, this kind of a tense diplomatic situation on the peninsula has been unseen in literal decades. And we also have an understanding that the Chinese may know that there's something very amiss going on, as they have ordered that all civilian traffic is to avoid the waters of South Korea entirely, including their fishing vessels, which have not returned since Thursday. They left Thursday and have not returned since, which is pretty insane because the Chinese are known to pick apart a fleet of snow crabs in about 2 hours. But nevertheless, the Chinese government is starting to show that there may be something going on in this area, a lot more than meets the eye, to be entirely honest with y'all, as Xi Jinping visited a People's Liberation Army rocket force unit today. That's the literal name of the People's Liberation Army detachment that kind of, I guess you could say, runs the rocket forces of China. And let me go see if I can just pull that up for y'all, the PLARF, to familiarize all of y'all with a branch of the People's Liberation Army. This is the branch that Xi Jinping visited today. This is something very interesting because the People's Liberation Army, which is largely the Chinese version of the Department of Defense, is the only one that has a completely separate branch for rocket artillery. This is incredibly interesting because really no one else has a separate branch for the rocket forces. Most Western forces have integrated their rocket forces into their actual army. For example, the U.S. Army's rocket artillery forces, like the M142 HIMARS or the M240, are literally integrated into the U.S. Army. There's no such thing as a branch in the U.S. military called the United States Rocket Forces or the United States Department of Defense Rocket Forces. We don't have an equivalent to this here in America. But what this is a strategic rocket force that is its entire sole purpose and duty is to operate strategic rocket systems, meaning of longer range, and to be able to use these in combined arms in support of the air or ground forces or sea forces of China to be able to support their efforts wherever they may be. It's an incredibly interesting force and actually comprises of about 300,000 personnel, to give you all an idea of how big the rocket forces of the PLA is. Nevertheless, Xi Jinping visited one of these bases today where one of these rocket forces are stationed, and he told the military to comprehensively strengthen its war preparations and to ensure its troops maintain reliable combat readiness. This is a very interesting statement, and I do have to tell y'all that in the modern world, constant readiness is a fairly standard thing across the board. But for the People's Republic of China, pretty much constant readiness, as it's called, is actually something that isn't really emphasized a lot in Chinese government statements. It is something that is largely an assumed thing, and so any additional emphasis on such a topic is usually considered that they are getting ready to conduct some sort of action here within the near future. And this is what we're believing at the moment. Considering that Xi Jinping is stating this to the rocket forces and not the actual People's Liberation Army, this is giving us an idea that whatever is going to be happening in the future may be directly correlating to the PLARF directly. And there are a couple of missions that they could conduct here within the very near vicinity of the future that would be plausible. One of them could be a form of rocket defense in support of North Korea. North Korea and China actually have a long-lasting relationship that has actually been slightly improving, at least over the last few years, as North Korea and China have started to, well, it's not really like they're becoming allies, I'll have to make that quite clear, but they are having a lot friendlier relationships with each other than they had during the 90s or at least the early 2000s, because there was a whole bunch of ideological stuff that happened back then that really kind of drove the two apart, very interestingly enough. But nevertheless, we do believe that the PLARF, which does operate air defense systems, or at least larger missile air defense systems, may try and set up their air defense systems in the area of the Northern Military District, which is the entirety of Manchuria, at least along the border of the Yalu River with North Korea, and may try and conduct some sort of defensive actions in support of North Korea, where they're not getting directly involved in the war, but they are defending North Korea from whatever may be returning towards them if they were to try and attack a country like South Korea. Another option could be that the PLARF is preparing, along with the PLAAF, which is the People's Liberation Army Air Force, and the PLAN, which is the People's Liberation Army Navy, to conduct some sort of hostile actions around the area of the Republic of China, which is also called Taiwan in simple wordage. It is one of these two options. We're not entirely sure, but considering that Chinese fishing vessels have left the waters of South Korea permanently at this point since Thursday, and also considering the heightening tensions on the Korean Peninsula, we are actually believing that the People's Republic of China may be preparing the PLARF, along with other elements of the People's Liberation Army as a whole, to prepare for a defensive action in support of North Korea if the situation on the peninsula was to start to go hot. We don't know exactly what to make of the statement, and I want to make it very clear that while the statement is an incredibly interesting one, and it really does stand out from the rest of the statements that Xi Jinping has ever made when going to any of these bases on some sort of a military review, we don't know exactly what this is being directed towards. It's either Korea or Taiwan. But we can't get into the exacts and say this is certainly about the Korean Peninsula or this is certainly about Taiwan. It could actually be about both of them, or it could just be a very odd statement just speaking about the condition of the PLA as a whole. Maybe so. But nevertheless, a lot of people are starting to talk about the East Asian region and whether the Chinese are a serious threat or if this is a build-up to China doing something here in the near future. And it seems as though people are actually a little split on this. Some people think that China is actually serious with this, and they may end up being a legitimate threat, or at least a acting party in some sort of an upcoming Korean conflict. Not in a direct way, but probably in a less direct way, operating in the defense of North Korea, but not in offensive actions. Some people are saying that China is really just doing their posturing as usual, and this posturing may have been ramped up here very recently, just because they're trying to make themselves look a bit like a strongman and a defender of this region, so that way other countries may consider them to be a viable shield and protector of weaker countries here in the near future. Some others are actually believing that this is a little bit concerning, but they want more info on this. The statement by Xi Jinping, while very clearly odd compared to normal statements made by Xi Jinping when reviewing the military, is a little bit vague, and it doesn't really lead us to know exactly what that statement was on. But nevertheless, loads of people are throwing in their inputs on this and their own takes. And Matthew, what are people thinking about the Chinese statement that's been made today, and what are you thinking about it as well? Do you think that's a legitimate, concerning statement? Of course, not with immediate concern down the road, probably within the next few months or maybe a year, or do you think that that's more so just normal Chinese posturing in the region?
All right, so after we did hear today that Xi Jinping did come out, start basically ringing the bells of war, saying that the military should start preparing for war, and specifically telling the rocket forces to get ready for war, that is rather concerning, at least in my opinion. So as the tensions are flaring around the world, what is China really up to? What are your thoughts? So 42% said China is very serious and it is a threat, while 34% said China is just posturing like usual, and 18% said it seems concerning, but I need some more information. And honestly, on this one, I would have to say it seems a bit concerning, but honestly, China is simply following the lead of pretty much every country around the world right now. It seems like every country is preparing for war, and everyone pretty much knows that something is on the horizon. Nobody's really sure what it's going to look like. Will it be World War III? Will it be a regional war? Or will it be maybe isolated to just one area of the world? Nobody's really sure, but China is once again ramping up its military, just like the United States is doing, just like the entirety of NATO is doing, and also like the smaller countries like North Korea and Iran are doing. Everyone's getting ready for something, and they're just getting prepared. So I don't think China's ready to necessarily start a war, but they are getting ready to basically defend themselves or basically jump in to help their allies if they were to get into a really bad situation with their military. So I'm actually kind of with the 33%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that in my opinion, I do believe that this is a bit of a serious threat, but it's not as serious as it comes off. And I'll explain at least what I'm thinking would plausibly happen, and I can be wrong. There's multiple different ways that the statement can be interpreted, but here's what I'm thinking at the moment. Considering that the statement was directed right at the PLARF, which is somewhat of an offensive and defensive force, but specifically in this scenario, it's going to be a defensive one. They are probably going to try and set up their rocket forces along the Yalu River and try and conduct some form of aerial defense for the North Koreans if they were to actually conduct hostile actions against South Korea. We know that if the North Koreans do conduct hostile action against South Korea in some sort of a small shooting engagement, it might not turn into a full-scale war. The South Koreans could start to conduct missile strikes against North North Korea in key select areas of their country. The Chinese not really wanting to get involved in the conflict, but also not wanting to see their buffer zone get completely erased off of the map, are most likely going to try and conduct some form of defensive air actions over North Korea to stop them from getting hit so badly. That may be the case. We don't believe that the Chinese are really gearing for war and are really hungry for a war, and we generally know that because of Chinese government statements themselves. Reunification with Taiwan, even in an invasion, is something that the Chinese are very serious about, but at the same time, they also don't really want to rush a situation or get into a conflict that they do not have to. This has already been made clear during the 19th People's Congress, during the 5th plenum, that the People's Republic of China is only seeking to try and conduct diplomatic or legal actions to gain the upper hand, and very rarely, unless if it is a last resort, would consider open warfare to be an open or viable option. For this reason, we know that they would not get involved in support militarily of North Korea in some sort of a conflict with the South. Another additional reason is that China is not actually that big of an enemy of South Korea. The relationships that China has with the Korean Peninsula are incredibly interesting, but to explain them the best I can, China and South Korea actually have a pretty decent trading portfolio with each other and make a good amount of money off of this trade. And while China is, of course, ideologically different than South Korea being a democratic capitalist country, and China being a communist, somewhat centrally planned, but somewhat free market economy, although it still has a great deal of heavy government control over it, they are ideologically different. The problem is the Chinese need money, and their economy is not doing that well at the moment. And everyone knows about all the things that have gone on in the Chinese economy lately, the large amounts of unemployment that are plaguing the youth of China. Not only that, we've been able to hear of the major real estate collapse that happened in China that they're still largely reeling from, although they're slowly recovering from it, along with a large amount of other issues. We have also seen that for some reason, the People's Republic of China's GDP has begun to slow. And while we can get kind of a bit of an idea or an understanding on what's going on in China lead to that, of course, the raging unemployment, sometimes because people are choosing not to go to work, as well as the real estate collapse, but it seems like there may be other factors at play. For example, the transition from an industrialized to a services-based economy may actually be a little bit too fast, and the Chinese may actually be suffering from that in the short term, and maybe even the long term as well. But nevertheless, the Chinese really don't want to go to war, at least in support of North Korea attacking the South, because that would end up directly destroying or heavily damaging one of their largest economic trading, I guess you could say, partners within this region at the moment. The other thing is that they also don't want North Korea to be destroyed. North Korea is not a country that China really loves, but it's not really a country that China really hates. China just kind of views it as a necessity because it creates a physical border or a barrier in between them and the United States and South Korea. The Chinese really don't want a U.S. force to be right along their border in Manchuria. And for that reason, North Korea literally exists as a country of convenience just for that reason. It largely gives China some deal of border security and also stops the United States from being directly along any part of their actual land border. And so for that reason, they view North Korea to be beneficial for that, but really that alone. China has actually strongly condemned in the past the use of nuclear weapons by North Korea, or even the possession of them at all. But over time, they've seen that North Korea is not going to relent off of giving up nuclear weapons, and so they've largely dropped that and just continue to allow them to have them, because, you know, there's no other real option unless you want to go in there and get nuked yourself to try and get the nukes from the North Koreans. So going off of that, we know that the Chinese would never get involved offensively in the Korean Peninsula. If anything, they would just try and defend North Korea so that way they can maintain the buffer zone they have with the United States that is at the DMZ at the moment. So that's what I would largely understand the statement to be. It is concerning because it would show the North Koreans would be somewhat insulated from any kind of response if hostile action is to come in the future, but at the same time, it's not anything that's going to completely end humanity or start a major regional conflict or a major world conflict inside of East Asia. So that's largely what I'm seeing at the moment. And Matthew, do you have anything to add on this before we start to move out of this area and on over into Eastern Europe?
So yeah, one thing I've been seeing a lot in the live chat, I've seen people asking the question, why is North Korea so sensitive to the fact that South Korea is sending over USB drives and balloons and trying to drop them on their cities and also their villages? that is a very big deal to North Korea because information is currently something that North Korea does not want their people to have access to. Because if they can get access to information to see how the Western world's living, they might decide they're going to rise up and then try to take the regime down, which the Kims really do not want to happen because that would be very detrimental to them. And right now, the North Koreans believe that maybe the way they're living is normal. Like, for example, not having enough food to eat and things like that. Maybe that is something that pretty much everybody around the world has. Like you saw in the propaganda video, they believe other people are eating snow coffee, which is something the Kim regime wants them to believe really badly so they'll stay complacent. But ultimately, though, even if they get their hands on those USB drives and they try to plug them into a computer, and remember, most North Koreans do not have computer systems, but for the ones that do and they plug that in, they only have one ISP, one internet service provider inside of North Korea. The moment that's plugged into that operating system that's custom for the North Korean regime, it notifies the government immediately and they try to triangulate and locate where that was plugged in at which computer it was, and they send agents to arrest those people. That's the way it works. So they are very, very sensitive about that. That's pretty much like worse than sending an explosive over on the drone. Sending over information on USB sticks is even worse than an actual weapon being sent over. So the information is being closely guarded for that reason. But I saw some people curious about that. I just wanted to answer that real quick because I was actually shocked to see some people didn't know that.
Well, actually, to get into a little bit more of an analysis of North Korea is a very interesting country. And to explain a little bit of why they are the way they are, we have to get into the ideology of North Korea, which is Juche that's somewhat modified by Songun. And I'll explain what the two of them are here really quickly. Juche is the communist principle, or the communist Korean principle specifically. It doesn't really exist anywhere else outside of Korea, but it's the communist Korean principle that North Korea must be completely autonomous and independent from any foreign country, wherever they may be. This means that the North Korean government heavily emphasizes that the nation must be independent from everyone else in every single way, regardless whether it's feasible or not. This is largely what has led to North Korea not being economically successful throughout the later half of the 20th century and on into the current century that we're in at the moment, as North Korea does not have the ability, at least resource-wise, to be completely independent from foreign powers. The North Koreans do not have an incredibly robust amount of, I guess you could say, biofuels, if you want to call it that, like coal or oil. They have a decent amount of coal, but they do not have a great deal of anything else. And so this means that they're heavily limited on the kind of vehicles, or at least the kind of economic activity that they can have, because their only fuel is coal. The other thing that's very interesting about the Juche philosophy is that it has created the cult of personality that has surrounded the Kim family up until the modern day, and has really solidified their reign over North Korea as almost this form of a communist monarchist form of a country. Another thing that really makes North Korea what it is today is a philosophy that was actually brought out by Kim Jong-il, not Kim Il-sung. Kim Il-sung was the guy who created Juche, but Kim Jong-il is the guy who created Songun, which is different than Songbun, which is their hierarchy, their caste system in North Korea. That is completely different than Songun. Songun.
You're saying it's Sungung or Sumbung?
It is, there is the Songbun, which is the Songbun, which is their caste system, and then there's the Songun, spelled Songun, which is a different, it's kind of like an ideology like Juche, but it kind of modifies Juche a little bit. So Songun is a militarized ideology that heavily emphasizes the armed forces of North Korea. And this is a very interesting one because this one only started to exist from about the beginning of the March of Suffering onwards, which means the beginning of the Great Famine, as we call it here in the West, from that point forward. Kim Jong-il brought about this philosophy because not only do they still continue the main tenets of Juche, which is, strong autonomy, even if it's completely impossible, and self-sufficiency, this now adds on a different element that the military is the way North Korea will survive. Through the military will give North Korea structure. It will do everything to save North Korea. They'll work in the fields on the farms. They'll work in the factories. They'll work in the mines. The military is the savior of North Korea and the ultimate arbiter of Juche across the entire country. And so these two things, Juche and Songun, largely dictate the kind of philosophy or the kind of culture that exists in North Korea on an administrative level. So with that in mind, you can see that a strong autonomy and largely an adherence to traditional values as the North Korean government lays it out is a very big thing. It is literally a core element of their society. And anything that goes against that largely starts to break that image down and can start to heavily, really like heavily damage the actual kind of social control that the North Korean government has over its people. And this is where the propaganda and agitation department comes in. The propaganda and agitation department, called PAD, or as I was calling it earlier, DAP, which was literally that in reverse, is the actual propaganda bureau of North Korea. Their entire job is to curate a specific image to the public about the North Korean government and also the Kim family as well. And it's also pretty much kind of lay out their view of the world. Like, the North Koreans and a large amount of their people get all of their information from the outside world from the propaganda and agitation department. These people have every single bit of control on exactly what is told to the North Korean people, and they can also smack things off the list and add them. They have even in the past retconned things. One thing that they retconned about 10 years ago that was actually pretty interesting, that was put out by Kim Jong-il, is that the Kim family had the power of teleportation. They actually retconned that about 10 years ago in the pad and stated that they never had the power of teleportation, and anyone who said that was a lie and a traitor to the country, although that literally came out from them. But nevertheless,
You know what's interesting as well, Enforcer, is this propaganda department right here. If I'm not mistaken, I was trying to skim the article here to see if I was correct, but I believe it's being headed or currently taken over by Kim Jong-un's sister, who might be the next in line for the actual throne in North Korea to take the place over. She's being put up for basically the line of succession, and it looks like that's more than just hype. It looks like she actually might be the next one, and she's currently got a lot of experience in the propaganda department. Like, that's her whole thing right now, and that goes to show you how important it is to control the minds of the North Korean people, that this is basically her training ground, is the PAD department right here, is the propaganda department. That shows you how important it really is.
oh, it's more important than that. You may or may not know. Did you know this? I'm gonna drop a bombshell on you, Matthew. Did you know that when Kim Il Sung was wanting to kind of groom Kim Jong Il to be the next leader of North Korea, he actually put him as the head of the propaganda and agitation department, and he was the head of this department all the way up until Kim Il Sung died?
I didn't know that, but I wouldn't be shocked, though. It's very important.
It is incredibly important. It was through this department that the cult of personality that still exists in Korea around the Kims to this day exists. It is through this department. There's no other way that exists. And Kim Yo-jong, which is the sister of Kim Jong-un, which you can see pictured here in this tiny little picture, is the one who's currently heading this department. So based off of prior kind of like promotion positions in the Kim family, she is next in the line of succession, because it's always the person who is in charge of the pad who pretty much moves up to the next of kin, or the next person in charge of the country. So going off of that, and also I see some people saying she's running the country. Not at all. She's not running the country. Kim Jong-un is running the country. That's how it works. She's here to kind of promote his image and also carry out what he wants his image to be, but she's not in charge of the country. A lot of people kind of misconstrue that. I don't know why that started getting out there, but Kim Jong-un is still in complete control of the country until he dies. That's just how it works. That's how it worked under Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-il, and now Kim Jong-un.
You know what is weird, though, is Kim Jong-un's sister, even though she's developed a reputation for being ruthless, like out of the blue, she's really been trying to prove herself, because before she became known as being ruthless, she was actually quite meek. Like, you can actually see her sort of like lurking around the background of some early photos with Kim Jong-un and also her family as well. She was not really like out there out front like she's being right now. Like, she really is trying to basically vie for that position, and I think also Kim Jong-un favors her to take that position as well. The only catch is, with North Korea being such a traditional environment, it is a little bit interesting that they are picking a female to run North Korea, because that is something in the Western world that wouldn't be a problem whatsoever, but in North Korea, with it being traditional like that, I think they have some concerns about whether or not the people are going to accept that. But ultimately, though, since the North Korean government controls the people so closely, whatever they tell them is what they're going to go with. But there is a possibility that some people might be off-put by that, and it might maybe slightly, maybe, I was about to say disrupt the government, but really can't, but it might cause some people to think twice about the new appointment.
Well, you would think, but it probably will not, because this kind of a problem was faced by Kim Il-sung during his reign, because he wanted to make sure that the Kim dynasty pretty much became a monarchy. So when he appointed Kim Jong-il to the propaganda and agitation department, and he became the head of it, Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il worked together in the last decades that Kim Il-sung was in charge of the country before he died to make sure that they laid out in the North Korean minds that the Kim family was destined to rule no matter what. And before that, it was believed that the Communist Party of Korea was going to determine who the next leader was, and it wasn't going to be a Kim. But through multiple purges and a good bit of propaganda, they made it to where, without question, everyone knew Kim Jong-il is destined to reign over Korea. I mean, the Kims are godlike, so they've got to rule. And they'll do the same thing for Kim Yo-jong if they need to, if they see that that's how the line of succession will continue. They'll start to spin the propaganda coming out of the People's Agitation Department to show that it's okay for a woman to lead because this is what Korea is all about. They'll start coming up out of Korean folklore about strong queens of Korea, strong princesses of Korea in its past, and say that she's pretty much going to be the next thing just like it. So get ready, it's coming around the corner, it's going to happen, and this is exactly the way it's supposed to go. This is ordained by the Kims. They'll do something along that line, and everyone will just have to accept it, and there won't be any ifs, ands, or buts about it publicly at all. And if there were, she would still have enough control over the government, and Kim Jong-un would as well, to just purge these people out of the government and to make sure to destroy any kind of dissent at all. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least the best I can, in my opinion, on what's going on with that, because it is without question that she will be pretty much largely determined to reign over North Korea if Kim Jong-un was to ever die. But if that is not the case, then it will probably be one of Kim Jong-un's descendants, direct descendants, which will probably be, if I had to take a guess, it probably would be his daughter, which is also a woman as well. So regardless, it will end up being a woman that ends up reigning over North Korea next, which would be pretty weird.
It's definitely not going to be. It's definitely not going to be Kim Jong Nam. Definitely not him. But also, by the way, I think that if she is put there as the leader of North Korea, she will be much more brutal than Kim. Not because that's necessarily her personality or the way she wants to run things, but because she will be trying to basically gain the trust of the people that she has what it takes to be able to rule. And that's kind of what Kim Jong-un did for a short little while when he first got in there. Because some people were like, hey, what's this young guy doing, like coming up behind like the older fellow that was in charge? Is he really going to be able to handle it? Kim Jong-un got in there and was very ruthless, and then he kind of mellowed out, believe it or not, he kind of mellowed out for like North Korean standards throughout his reign. But I think she'll be getting there, probably be brutal for a longer time than Kim Jong-un was in a pretty big way. It'll probably be pretty unstable in the country for a little while.
It might be. I will actually tell you this, Matthew. I have watched over the past few days, just for y'all to know, endless hours in my free time and when I'm working. I've been listening to endless documentaries that are hours long each about how North Korea has evolved over time and how much of a role, and it's an unbelievable role, that the PAD has had in North Korea's development. And I'm pretty sure, after seeing how this has gone for about 80 years now in North Korea, I'm sure without a doubt, to be entirely honest with you, that this would go off pretty seamlessly. Kim Yo-jong would just be the next leader of Korea, and that would largely be the end of the story, and then we would see how it would go under her. Because what's interesting is that Kim Jong-un is the only one of the Kims. Well, Kim Jong-il was really the only Kim that was in charge of the PAD, but from what we know, Kim Jong-un was not in charge of the PAD. He was maybe involved in it a little bit, and he has been heavily involved in it now that he's become the leader of North Korea, but he wasn't really involved in it that much. He actually ended up pretty much living in the West in Switzerland until he became 18, and then they returned him back to North Korea, and then he was groomed to be the next leader of Korea, and then when Kim Jong-il died, he took over that position. And we've actually seen, based off of what's been leaking out of North Korea, that North Korean media has changed greatly under Kim Jong-un. It's got a much more different sort of a focus and a spin to it than Kim Jong-il or Kim Il-sung laid out, but once again, it largely is what these leaders need and require out of the PAD that the PAD produces. So if Kim Jong-un sees that there will not be a male heir to take over the country, they will start to spin the propaganda where by the time he dies, everyone will think, well, it's only natural that a woman would take over at this point. You know, like, and of course, I've got to put this out there. because I know some people are going to try and spin this another way. I have absolutely no problem with a female Kim taking over North Korea or a female leading any country anywhere. If someone's competent for the job, that's what they are. But in North Korea, there is a very kind of a rigid sort of a system that exists where women are expected to work incredibly hard and do everything that a man does, but also at the same time largely be submissive to the men and kind of do homekeeping things when they return from the factories every day. That's kind of what's been laid out in North Korea for decades. And so for Kim Yo-jong to take over the country, that sort of a stigma or at least a cultural ideal would have to be molded a little bit to make sure that it would fit into what they need at this point in time. So with that,
That's like the ultimate being progressive in North Korea. Like Kim Jong Un was already being progressive with the way he's handled stuff because he sort of like deviated from the norm a little bit. There's many ways he did that. I won't go into all of them as we don't want to rabbit hole too deep. But I think she's going to be like the ultimate like progressive, like putting a female in charge in North Korea. That'll be something that is like for their world, it's ground shaking, and I think it will be for a pretty long time.
it probably will be. Like North Korea is actually really interesting with that though, because in the PAD they really emphasized a lot throughout their entire history that women can do everything and should do everything that men do. They should work in the factories, they should work in the fields, they should do it all. But then at the same time, they also, like, I gotta say, women in North Korea have like the worst luck being in that country, because they're like, not only can they do everything that a man should do, they should still do everything that a woman would do in a traditional kind of a marriage. And it's like that is a short end of the stick right there, because the men just work like they do and then they come home and rest. The woman works like a man and then comes home and has to home keep like a woman would if they were a stay-at-home wife. And that kind of arrangement is absolutely insane, but that's largely the one that's been laid out by propaganda over decades. So I don't know, maybe it wouldn't be that much of a transition from that to say that a woman could lead the country, because, you know, they already say that a woman can do everything a man can do. It's just that they're going to probably cut out the whole, you know, including the housekeeping being submissive to men thing, and then they'll just go, a woman can do everything that a man can do, period. And, you know, society's moving on because the great leader has deemed it so, and then everyone will just have to get in line with that.
Oh, can you imagine though that if she came into charge right now and she like took over, let's say Kim suddenly had a heart attack or something like that and he conked out, and then they put her in charge right now with the tensions rising between South and North Korea. Me personally, I think they'd be going to war within a week if that were to happen. Like it would be a pretty fast thing, or at least that's my current assessment on it. I'm not sure if the enforcers are going to disagree with that, but considering how she would need to be aggressive first starting out, that would be like the recipe for a disaster for war on the Korean Peninsula if she was suddenly thrust into power right now.
I mean, maybe so, but we'll just largely have to wait and see, because we have so much more news to cover. And I just looked at the time, I was like, dang, man, we were like 40 minutes in at least to the news and we're still on the Korea. So I was like, I got to make sure that we keep this thing on track, because we got an insane amount of news coming out of other corners of the world as well. But moving on out of the Korean Peninsula and East Asia as a whole, we're now going to be moving on into the area of Eastern Europe. And as y'all can tell, all of our markers are in Eastern Europe. A lot happened in Eastern Europe. Of course, some of the bigger diplomatic actions and kind of world news things happen in East Asia today. But of course, there is a great deal of what is going on in this area. And also, I hope that, thank you for saying that, Andrew Honeycutt. I had to make sure I said that, though, very clearly, because there are people who will misunderstand things like what we're saying about North Korea. And let's see. Yeah, I'm seeing some interesting points right there that some people are saying, but some people always try and take things out of context. So when you explain something about another country, they for some reason want to think that you believe that as well, or that's the way you think. I'm just trying to explain how these countries work, like North Korea, and what kind of troubles they could face for analysis reasons. But moving on from that and on into Eastern Europe, the Ukrainians launched another, and I mean a whopper, of a massive drone attack just over the past 24 hours. 110 drones, from what we understand, flew into the Russian Federation, striking multiple targets across the entirety of the country. And I already want to get y'all to the comedy in this whole ordeal, because it was good. Overnight, more than 100 Ukrainian drones attacked various Russian regions. According to the Russian Defense Ministry, they claim that air defense shot down all 110 of them over all 7 regions. Now, I'm about to show you all the footage that proves them wrong. So here's the clip. It's a quiet night out in the middle of Russia. And you know what? I'm actually going to go ahead and spoil this one for y'all and really get y'all the big deal here. This camera is actually facing directly towards a training base in Oriel, where we believe that there may be North Korean soldiers in training at the moment. We cannot confirm that. I'll tell y'all why we can't confirm that yet, but there's been a heavy rumor out there that this is actually the camera pointed towards that training camp and that there were North Koreans at this facility when it was stricken by the drone here in a second. Of course.
Oh, yes. It was a peaceful night that night.
Of course, you can hear it's completely quiet out there. Also, Matthew, I haven't been able to respond to your text yet. I have seen it, though, and all I have to say to you, and you'll know what it means, is bruh. Like, what the hell? Like,
I hear a little something out there. The angry sound of a lawnmower. Oh, the haunting sound of a lawnmower. Bruce Lee got it right.
oh, and it's getting louder. Well, I guess some people like to get their mowing done in the morning.
The Cub Cadets coming in for a landing.
Oh, it's kind of having a little bit of a whir there. Oh my god!
Oh my god! Isn't it also kind of weird, like how when there's like military bases and stuff nearby, like the Russians who don't really have Wi-Fi across their whole country suddenly have like surveillance cameras and Wi-Fi hooked up to look at it?
Yeah, you know, I find that weird, but I don't question it too much. You know, it is weird though. But still, we like to see this kind of stuff, you know, because it does let us know, and it does let us show that one, the Russians already lied because one of the drones did hit their target, and two, it also shows us that the Russians may have just lost some of the precious North Koreans that they just transported all the way across the country. However, I have to kind of put a little bit of a damper on this for some reasons. One, we don't really know if the North Koreans have actually made it into the area around Ukraine. Our intelligence, the only one that we've been able to confirm so far showing that North Koreans are in Russia, shows at their last location that they were around the town of Horel, just south of Lake Kanka and north of Vladivostok. There are so many North Koreans that are in this area at the moment. There's approximately 9,000 of them at a minimum, that to transport them all the way across the Russian Federation would take a large amount of trains. And these trains do not travel quickly across Russia. They're not reaching like 120 to 150 miles an hour along most of the route. They're usually reaching about maybe 60 miles an hour at their fastest. For this reason, based off the last time that we heard about these North Koreans and how fast a train could travel across Russia, the trains carrying the North Koreans may have made it to Irkutsk or maybe Krasnoyarsk at this point, but they certainly wouldn't have made it into the area of eastern Russia, well, western Russia by this point, into Oriel and dropped these North Koreans off of this training base for them to be hit there yet. This may indicate that some North Koreans have already made it to this area, or it may indicate that this base was portioned for the North Koreans and their training, but they haven't made it there yet, and so the base may have been largely empty when it was hit, and largely sending a message to the North Koreans as well. But moving on from that clip and on into our next one, we do have some additional clips here showing the Russians getting glassed in a couple of other angles. This one right here shows the air defense going off, and then a drone hitting on the ground.
I like that angle. That's a nice angle of attack. I like that one.
Man, that was a great angle. And if you want to see another angle, you can see the Russians getting obliterated on all fronts.
Oh, the football crowd's out here, man.
Dude, they got an entire spectator stand out there going, yeah, yeah. And we also got to see another hit here. We don't know where that hit was location-wise, but still pretty interesting. Moving on from that and out of this specific clip, we did get to hear the rumor that the North Korean training camp was hit in Oriel, and we were able to get that apparently this was the clip that we showed y'all just a second ago. Meanwhile, up in the area of Nizhny Novgorod, we also got to see that a Ukrainian drone hit a smaller explosives factory within this area. We can see the air defense shooting down one of the drones, but the air defense is not going to be entirely successful.
Хороша была. Ай-яй-яй, ой-ой-ой.
Ay-yay. And moving on from that clip and into our next one, we can then see the obvious sign of an impact out in the distance as a orange hue lights up the ground, showing that a Ukrainian drone did impact at this explosives plant in Nizhny Novgorod.
Охуеть.
Охуеть! By the way, we are at
Also, Also, by the way, like I could have sworn that last video we just watched right there, I heard small arms fire in the background. And I think that also might be what they're protecting the explosive plant with. Is not necessarily real air defense, but they just got the AKs out firing at the drone.
Maybe so. I wouldn't doubt it at this point. They're down to like nothing air defense wise within most of Russia. But we also got really big news out of Yekaterinburg as a massive munitions plant was hit. Actually, really quickly, let me clarify this. This video and the one in Nizhny Novgorod seem to be almost the same. This one's a lot longer, though, in length, so I'm going to put this out there. Either a ammunition factory was hit in Yekaterinburg, or a munitions plant, an explosives factory, was hit in Nizhny Novgorod. We are not entirely sure, because if these clips are identical, and they look different. So I think this is in Yekaterinburg. Yep, this is. Also, by the way, quickly, everyone, we have almost gotten to the $3,000 goal. We are at $2,400 raised, and if we can just get this thing over the top in the name of the LSA and make sure to hit another fundraiser goal, that would be absolutely incredible and assuring victory against the Axis powers. So please, do make sure to support the fundraiser. It helps out in Ukraine greatly.
This guy's like a wannabe news reporter out here. He's giving a whole synopsis of the thing.
Yeah, I counted roughly 14 of at least drones.
This is enough to get you locked up by the FSB right here.
Man, this guy is literally like just dodging this whole area right now. He's like saying exactly what's happening and everything.
Oh, look, there's a space too. That's really great.
Okay, so this video is incorrect because it did say somewhere. Oh, wait a minute, hang on. So let me tell you all this really quickly. Apparently, this is where it went wrong. This is apparently in Nizhny Novgorod. It says Dzerzhinsk, but I pulled up Dzerzhinsk and tried to geolocate it, and I was given one that was in Yekaterinburg. So once again, this is up in the area of Nizhny Novgorod. So now we're going to continue this clip with that in mind.
Я охуел, мама знает, блядь, что происходит, но это жопа. Мне страшно, серьезно говорю, страшно. Ебануться, блядь.
Oh, блядь.
Bleh.
Jacob Clark said maybe he's the Russian enforcer. He's calling out the Russian enforcer, but he might get a visit from a Russian enforcer.
He's laughing a little. He's laughing for now, I'll tell you that. But the bee's knees gonna get him, my boy. Like, they're not gonna treat him well.
Как так, блядь?
What так-то?
Пиздец. Пиздец. Просто полный пиздец.
He's getting a big
I
laugh
still
out of it.
understand, man. Like, why the Russians like do those? Like, I don't know if this guy is like trying to like give the information away to help out Ukraine, or maybe just filming it because he just wants to film something and post it. Why do they do that, knowing that their country is like a surveillance state, basically with the FSB, and then they show their face on top of like giving away the intel, like to the enemy, like that, and posting on the internet? Do they not know they're not going to get a visit from the FSB? I mean, what are they doing that for?
I don't really know. Like, it really is stupid, and I'm sure that guy got arrested later after he published this. But still, it's weird. It's incredibly weird. But before we move on into the rest of our Ukraine news, really quickly, I do want to make a quick mention of something. The fundraiser has gotten up to $2,419 at this moment. And we are less than $600 away. We're about $581 away from the fundraiser goal. And we're going to call up something that we have done actually just a little while ago to make sure that this thing gets over the top. We are calling up a general order. We're calling up a general order. And if you are a member of the Lee Spring Army and want to support this fundraiser and get it over the top so that way we can defeat the Axis powers with Ukrainian victory, please make sure to throw in a $5 donation to this fundraiser. Nova Ukraine is an absolutely amazing nonprofit that has been helping out greatly in Ukraine. It is a humanitarian nonprofit that supports Ukrainian citizens who have had to run from war-torn war-torn areas of the country and help them to be able to be housed, to be fed, and to also find future accommodations that may be semi-permanent while the war continues on. They also do a load of other projects, and one of our favorite ones actually is is kind of like the GI bills that they give out to Ukrainian soldiers. They give Ukrainian soldiers that are serving and have formerly served through the war pretty much GI bills to go to trade schools or college and to pick up useful things to do after the war that will make them a great deal of money and help them to support their families on into the future. It's an incredibly amazing nonprofit. I highly suggest that y'all look into it and Google it. And I'm also going to be throwing in $20 right here to make sure that I throw in my part and do my part in the middle of this amazing general order. And I'm sure that here in just a short moment, we are going to hit that amazing and incredible $3,000 goal. And hopefully we will see, and it's getting very close at the moment, and we are going to actually continue on for just a little bit while the fundraiser reaches this incredible and amazing goal. And before we move on, I do have to say that someone has asked a question. Jaden said, no super chat tonight? Yes, there is no super chat tonight. Not a single one. We do not make a single dime on the stream tonight at all. Every single day of the week, super chats come in that support this channel and help us to keep this thing running. But on tonight, we do not make a single dime. I can prove that by just pulling over the stream window right here and showing y'all that the chat revenue shows up as 0. Meaning that every single time y'all are throwing in one of these donations, we're not making a single dime off of it. As far as the fundraiser goes, 100% of all the money that y'all give to this fundraiser in the donations is processed by YouTube and then sent directly to that nonprofit that it was earmarked for. Tonight's nonprofit is Nova Ukraine, and all of the money that y'all are gathering up to send to Nova Ukraine will be going directly to Nova Ukraine in about, I believe, a couple of weeks after this fundraiser ends. All of that support will then be used by Nova Ukraine to do everything that they're doing inside of Ukraine and to help out massively. It is an amazing thing that YouTube does, and we've run all of our fundraisers this way since we have ever been able to. And I have to say that it's probably the most transparent and open way that someone could do this, because there is no questions about a possible middleman that can get involved or anything like that, because for the most part, it's you know, we're not doing any middleman stuff. It's all on YouTube's end, which makes this very open and transparent. And not only that, it completely removes us from touching any of the money. And that's why we do. That's why we always run our fundraisers this way, because it's the most open and transparent way we believe we could allow everyone to fundraise and do a great deal of help in this war effort. And so with that, I hope that does address that question incredibly well, as we are sitting just $37 away from $3,000. And I think that we're actually, we are only $17 away from reaching the fundraiser goal tonight. Only $17. We are incredibly close. We are getting within inches of the $3,000 goal.
Oh, this is the long-lasting goal. Like, it's taking a long time. $15 left. Come on, please. A real donation, please.
We need a real support, long-lasting. Oh, hey! We hit the goal, baby!
Hey, we hit the goal!
We hit it, baby!
Igor, we hit the goal, baby. Another goal, another Sunday. Let's go.
Man, I love to see it. Don't you love to see it? I love to see it. It's great.
Man, I love to see it. I'm telling you what.
It's beautiful to see, and I cannot believe that the LSA has hit another goal by just the skin of its chinny chin chin. I mean, it was really close right there. We just got over the fundraiser goal by only $82. But I do have to say that it is absolutely amazing that each and every one of y'all have come together on this channel for 3 years now, and we continue to slam out these Sunday night fundraisers and hit every single goal every single time without fail. A truly incredible thing. And before we move on into the rest of the news that we have, I want to make sure that we give a big shout out to all of the folks who have made this possible tonight. I wish that we actually could give a shout out to every single one of y'all, but usually there are so many of y'all, we can only give a shout out to the top donors who have thrown in donations above $50. But nevertheless, I want all of y'all to know, and also a $333 donation just came in. That is probably from Hal Rose, and it just shows anonymous, but a big shout out to Hal Rose, because those are always from Hal Rose. But nevertheless, a huge shout out to every single person who has supported this fundraiser tonight. regardless of how big or how small y'all's donations were, every single one of y'all has come together to make this thing possible. And I want to make that very clear to everyone, because some people think that just because they only have $1 or they only have $5 or they only have $500, that it doesn't matter. And there's no point in supporting or helping out because the help that you're doing is insignificant. And I would have to disagree with that. 3,000 people with $1 each do as much to help out Ukraine as one person with $3,000. Every single person does their part in supporting these fundraisers, and every person does their part to ensure that the Western world is able to reign supreme over its not its allies, its adversaries around the world, and to continue to face them down each and every single day in every single corner of the globe. Every single one of y'all are making that possible by going to work every single day, by supporting these fundraisers every single Sunday, and continuing to make sure that you have America and the Western world's interests at mind every single day. If it wasn't for all of y'all, none of this would be possible. Not just this channel, but the existence of the United States of America, our Western world as a whole, and the survival of Ukraine on top of that. I've got to give a huge thanks to every single one of y'all once again, but really quickly, let's give a shout out to the top donors of tonight's fundraiser, so that way we can recognize at least some of y'all who have helped to make this fundraiser tonight possible. And so what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and also, by the way, I see we've hit $3,535 raised of the $3,000 goal. So we are soaring way above the $3,000 goal, and it's still going even strong right now. But to call off our top donors of the night, we have a massive $333 donation from what I believe is Hal Rose, who was that anonymous viewer that threw in that massive one. And also, that is the largest one of the night as well. So huge shout to Hal once again for that massive donation to Nova Ukraine. And also, Just Chillin' threw in a $200 donation, the second largest of the night. Huge shout out to Just Chillin' as well. And we also had a $150 from Tom S, as well as a $150 from Andy L, along with several $100 donations. We had another one from Hal Rose, as well as a $100 from some guy called the Enforcer, as well as a $100 from BC Skyman, Red Bart, as well as a $54 from Paramecium 13. And then we had several $50 donations. The first one was from Axel K. Then we had one from Greg Carrier, Neil Vizanot, Dad Good, Brian Justin, Ronald Mead, Charles Hazlitt, as well as Mike Smith, BC, a BCR, and also Charles Hazlitt once again for a combined total of 100 from Charles. And once again, huge shout out to everybody we called up tonight. That is a huge help to Ukraine. And also, thank you very much for deciding to support Nova Ukraine through our channel as well, because we're glad to be able to facilitate it to raise more money for Ukraine as well. And also, huge shout out to everybody we were not able to call off as well. There were simply so many donations coming in tonight, and also pretty much every Sunday. It's impossible to call them all out, but we see them all, and we appreciate it because all the amounts add up to equal the grand total of $3,576 of the $3,000 goal. Huge shout out to the LSA once again, and Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to give a huge thanks to y'all all once again. I gave my massive thanks and overflowing appreciation to all of y'all right at the start of this, but I still have to thank you all so much once again, because if it wasn't for each and every one of y'all and your combined efforts, none of this would be possible. And so a huge thanks to y'all once again. And one last thing before we get into all of the news that we have throughout the rest of Ukraine. Matthew, we've got a couple of questions. And so what do we have?
All right, so we do have a couple of questions here. So our first one is going to go to a Mad Machine, who says, will Putin resort to using tactical nuclear weapons before he admits defeat?
We are doubting that he would, at least at the moment. There isn't really a reason to use tactical nuclear weapons, because generally the premise or the philosophy around the world is that nuclear weapons are only used as deterrents and are very rarely used as offensive weaponry. And using a tactical nuclear weapon inside Ukraine would largely be considered an offensive use of the weapon against a non-nuclear power, which looks pretty bad. That's why no one has ever done that in history, unless if it was the United States nuking Japan. But at that time, none of this kind of a philosophy was laid out at all. Everyone went, oh, the bomb's really big, the bomb's really cool, let's just blow a couple of them up on Japan and see what they do, and hopefully it ends the war sooner. And it really did all of those things. So beyond that, we've never seen that a nuclear power has ever used nuclear weapons on a non-nuclear country, and I would largely assume that that rule would be followed even in this war, even if the Russians lose, because that's exactly what happened with the United States in Korea, the US in Vietnam, the Soviets in Afghanistan, the Soviets really everywhere. They never used a nuclear weapon, and we never used a nuclear weapon, and we think that that would also be the case in Ukraine as well. That would be at least my take at the moment, and that could be wrong. I want to make that very clear. That's why I had to kind of like stop myself and think for a second. It could be wrong. This could be the first time we see tactical nuclear weapons get used on the battlefield against a non-nuclear power, or at all for that matter. But I'm still doubting that that would be the case. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least the best I can. With that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And of the segment, by the way. And also, moving on to our second question here, this one goes to Dingbad YouTube, who said, did some of Hamas surrender in the Middle East today?
Some of Hamas, I actually do not know. There's usually some that surrender here and there. I haven't heard anything in particular about it today. Usually, well, actually, because there's been so much going on around the world that the whole fighting in the Gaza Strip deal has kind of just ended up going onto the back burner. We're largely focusing on what's going on in Lebanon at the moment, considering that's a really hot topic, and also what's going to be happening with Israel and Iran here in the near future. So I haven't heard enough about that today to say that I did or did not hear about it or could confirm or deny that it actually happened. Not to give the Glomar Explorer kind of an answer there, but still, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the final question of this segment, because Matthew had to clarify me that I said second to last question of the night. That is not the case. We still got a lot to go. But Matthew, what is our last question of this segment?
All right, so this one is going to go to Nannerbread, who asked a very interesting question, which I'm very curious about as well. They said, what happened to the escaped North Korean troops and that were escaped into Ukraine?
We don't really know. And that kind of, well, here's the thing though. I have to make sure to clarify this statement, because I did say a while ago, and I was incorrect in making this statement, so I want to clarify this now. I was incorrect in making the statement that the Ukrainians had captured them. And I don't even know if the story was true. It has a bit of a Budanov-esque kind of a thing to it, because the Ukrainian government has never confirmed that they've actually gotten possession of these North Koreans, or for that matter, that they're even there. The story was put out that 18, specifically 18, no more than 18, and no less than 18 North Koreans apparently got lost or deserted their units and just started wandering around with their hands extended out in front of them through Russia. We don't even know if the story is actually true at this point, because we have never gotten any further details about this from the Ukrainian Ministry of Intelligence. And not only that, we've never gotten picture or video evidence to actually show that North Koreans are in this area of Russia at this point. So we are actually kind of believing at this point that this may be another kind of like a Budanov story, the best way I can explain that, where it's just kind of conjured up out of thin air and it didn't actually happen, because the Ukrainians have also never stated that they have gotten a North Korean defector from the KPA that's in this area. So we actually do not know. I kind of have to retcon a lot of what we were saying, because now that we have video and picture evidence, the only place we see North Koreans in Russia are literally on the other side of the world in Vladivostok, or at least around that area. So we don't know if any of the Korean intelligence at this point is true about the North Koreans being just across the border inside of Russia and firing KN-23s at them. We don't really know. Like, we have not gotten any proof of that at all at this point, and the only proof we have of the Koreans in Russia is literally on the other side of Russia, nowhere near Ukraine at all at this point. So I have to correct.
I will say this, Enforcer. The story that I heard was that a small number of troops were actually already fighting on behalf of Russia, and they might be disguised actually as Russian soldiers, like we saw them getting handed out Russian uniforms and equipment at the training depot that we saw in that one video. So, like you said, there's really no like concrete video evidence of them escaping or even being in that area. But that is the current report, by the way, from South Korean intelligence. And also, I never did hear that they got captured by the Ukrainians. I heard that they had simply escaped and they ran off, and the Russians sent out units and brigades to go look for them to get them back, because I suspect that if the story is true and they did indeed run off, that probably the Russians will either execute them in the field, or the North Koreans might insist on having them return to North Korea to stand trial, to have a show trial, to make an example for the other North Koreans that might be sent in the future to fight on behalf of Russia. So I think the story, like, it's not, I wouldn't say it's blown to hell just yet, like the entire story. That is what we're hearing, but at the same time, we really need some more evidence.
I would have to agree with that as well. And so I hope that does address that question the best I can, at least with what we know at the moment. But moving on from that and into the area where the Koreans were supposedly at, we're now going to be moving on into the Kursk Oblast, as we have loads of combat news from this area today. The Russians have been trying to push the Ukrainians back out of this area, and they have been able to succeed at that a little bit. From what we know, to make sure I do this adjustment live on air, the Russians have been able to push the Ukrainians back just a little bit more to the outskirts of Lyubomovka, from what we know at the moment. The Ukrainians have also been pushed back from the area of Snagost as well, and so this would be a pretty rough estimate of what I've heard the front line to look like today. And once again, our front lines are always rougher estimates because that's about the best anyone can do given the fog of war in this area. But nevertheless, we were able to see that Russian forces were still getting hit incredibly heavily in this area, and we're taking some pretty decent losses, while we hear some copyrighted music most likely start to play.
Also, by the way, I think I might be like maxing my mic settings out right now. I bumped my gain down just a little bit. I saw some people saying I was eating the mic, so hopefully that's helping a little bit. I saw Chris just say, I can hear you without my hearing aids. That's not good. So I'll turn it down a little bit.
Yeah, it kind of looks like you actually are maxing out on OBS's end. So getting back from that and rewinding the clip a little bit, I don't know why that's happening, by the way, because I haven't changed anything on my end. So I think that might be your tech side of things. Something may have been reset over there on some sort of setting, but we can still see the 501st slamming the Russians near Lyubomovka.
Someone said I can hear you from England. That's not good either.
Oh my lord. Man, we're really turning into that Korean propaganda music, you know, like from the Punchable Electronic Ensemble.
Pretty much. And also, by the way, I bumped my gain down. I see a lot of people are saying it sounds perfectly fine now. So I'm not sure why OBS is showing I'm maxing out, because my end doesn't even show that.
Man, well, I don't know, man. I mean, OBS is the ultimate arbiter of what's coming through on air. I don't know, but we can see the drones slamming, and I mean slamming, into these Russian positions. Man, these Ukrainian drones are showing up, man. They're saying, let's get ready to boogie. Oh, my goodness. There went a whole outpost. And that's the end of that clip, but really interesting to see and good to know. Moving on from that and out of that area and towards Lyubomovka, we also got to see the Ukrainians clearing out an area. Y'all want to see how the Ukrainians clear out Russian positions that refuse to surrender? I'll show you. They cleared it out so loudly that the mic bursted, and now we're hearing it kind of muted like. It sounds like rain.
Chris, can you hear that without your hearing aids as well?
All can hear it from England. And now they're on their way.
Hey, that's a happy fella right there.
Oh, did he toss a nade? Oh, he did. They're very methodical about clearing this. It's very calm.
Джон. О.
This Ukrainian soldier, in the process of firing this machine gun, has killed the following: 1 Russian, 3 birds, 5,000 ants, and maybe 2 goats. We are unable to confirm that because the Kadyriovites immediately saw them, went, ooh la la, and put them in the back of an Akhmat and then drove off.
They asked this Ukrainian right here, they said, what's more valuable, 1 bird in the hand or 2 in the bush? He said, Bliat, take them all out. Bliat starts firing.
Man, this guy said, he said, fire at anything that moves. The grass started moving, and he just started laying them out. Like, look at this. I'll be entirely honest with y'all, folks. I don't think this machine gun fire is exactly accurate or precise, for that matter. I think that it's missing on both of those marks. Yeah. Oh, and he fell.
Oh. At least he got some bracing.
Yeah. All that's going to be helping out with Zane. Sadly, he was too hyped up from his coffee made of snow, and he ended up killing the 6 birds that are reserved for Tuesday. It's like, bro, a rip to the crowd.
Man, that's a lot of ammo going to, I guess you could say a waste, maybe? I don't know.
Okay, I'm not understanding. We're gonna skip forward a little bit
Второй день уже
to them
штурмуем.
firing an RPG. Hopefully not getting anyone in the back blast here.
Не можемо ніяк його викорити, нахуй. Вже гранати, нахуй, кидали, блядь. Що тільки не робили.
Don't tell me he's gonna fire that thing like
Підер,
right
завайся!
Oh my God, man!
Oh
He's
my
like Elmer
Lord.
Fudd. I'm haunting wabbits.
Бізон.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm knowing why they're firing at the ground now, Matthew. I guess the entire thing where they're firing is covered in like giant plywood slabs that are covering like a trench work or something, and they're just firing down into it, hoping to get someone down there. I think that's what they're doing.
Maybe so. That seems like a bit of a doozy of a plan, though. Is I really couldn't see where the RPG just went, but it looked like it pretty much went like right in front of him. So if it works, it works. As long as he's not getting fragging himself or anything.
Yeah, I guess. We can see
Що ти
this
хочеш
fella
підерам
here.
сказати?
Пиздай їм всім, блядь.
He's going to have some
Отак,
fun.
Боля.
Все,
He is
братишка,
hyped,
давай,
he
іди,
is
хуярь. Давай.
Just flag the cameraman, but he's okay though. The cameraman never dies.
A little bit of back blast never hurt anyone. It's just a nice,
Well, you
refreshing
better
breeze. And we see they're about to blast one down there.
Давай, братик. Попытка номер 2.
Uh-oh.
Что?
Uh-oh. Technical
Кажа
issues.
птичка, блядь. Ну ёбана в рот. Кацапу,
Ай.
блядь, повезло.
Uh-oh.
Оба.
Uh-oh. Oh,
I heard it click.
Man, you know, I saw a guy over in Myanmar. He got his head blown off by
Man, I don't know about this technique, man. I'm not gonna lie. Like I usually don't like to
Ooh,
say the Ukrainians
it
are
does.
messing up, but the technique seems a little bit sketchy.
I'm not gonna lie, the eyebrows are being raised a lot by me in this clip. We're gonna skip forward. Well, actually, this is pretty much the rest of the clip is them firing more RPGs. But with that, that's the end of the clip for the most part. It's kind of the same thing over and over. And we're now going to be moving on into our next clip, where we got to see that a mortar crew of the 129th Separate Territorial Defense Brigade destroyed some Russians near Plekovo. Y'all want to see it? Oh yeah, we got the beats. And we can see the crow. I mean, that crow's getting that absolute Chad beat thing going on with it. But we can see the Ukrainian drones here finding some Russians. Oh! Oh, and we can see a little Russian down there, and we can see some more. Oh! Dude, they're taking care of these people, man. Oh,
Free healthcare, blyatt.
Oh,
man, I'll tell you what. It's like the
man.
West is bringing that free healthcare to Russia.
man, I'm telling you what, man. I'll tell you this, man. Now I know why America doesn't have free health care. I know where all the tax money went. And how. But we can see them hitting another Russian position. And we're actually going to be ending this clip right here because it's got some interesting elements further down the line. But we also got to see a Russian drone getting shot down over the area today by machine gun fire. And there it is. Shot down by the machining gewehr.
Man, I'll tell you what. The United States may not have free health care, but damn, do we make a good explosion.
Oh, man, I'm telling you, I get no respect around here. Oh, man, I go to the hospital. I get a bill of 40 grand. Oh, man, all that went to the mortar rounds. Oh, man, I'm telling you.
How's your liver? I don't know, but the RPG fire is damn good.
Вот він догорає, втори, який він стріляв, камера згорівша.
And there's the drone. It's toasting.
Розмах крила.
Looks to be crushed a little. The wing's kind of intact.
Стріла 10
Low mileage, no damage, $50,000. No lowballing. I know what I got. But that's the end of that clip, and we're now going to be moving on from that on to our next bit of news in the Kursk Oblast, where we got to see the 80th Aerosol Brigade downing that Orion. You want to see it? There it is again. It's a duplicate. It's a duplicate that I had, just to make sure that we had it. But moving on from that and into the local... Oh, wait a minute. By the way, the Russians started sending drones of their own back into Ukraine, and we actually got to see a Ukrainian Mi-24 doing something absolute Chad-like, shooting down a Shahed 136 over the skies of Ukraine with the main gun on the helicopter. We've never seen this before. It's like a drive-by shooting. And there's the Ukrainian Mi-24. You can hear the main gun giving out little bursts as it's trying to shoot that little drone down right there. Scrimpy.
Man, Scrimpy would love this one.
Oh! And they got it!
Oh, they hit it. Dang, that was crazy.
Like a high-speed car chase. Incredibly cool. Very wow, very impressive. But moving on from that and into our location unknowns, we only have a few. We were able to see a Puma helicopter conducting medevac operations in the Eastern Front. We don't know exactly where. We were also able to see some Syrian volunteers fighting on the side of Ukraine. That's pretty rare. You don't really see a lot of people coming from Syria to fight in Ukraine. They have a lot of war as it is down there. But these guys said, you know what's better than Syrian war? Other wars. And so they traveled on up to Ukraine to fight there. Kind of unique, really, and you don't really see that much. But we were able to see something you do see a lot, which is really high casualty reports. And, oh, that's really high.
Oh, dang, man. 3 Bobcat skid steers, man. That's tremendous. Also, I heard yesterday, by the way, we did not get to see it. Sadly, did not run a stream last night, but there was a massive amount of Bobcats lost last night. It still wasn't like one of the top losses of Bobcats, but it was crazy. But Enforcer, tell us more. The losses look nuts.
And also, while Matthew brought that up, big apology for not having a stream run last night. There was a lot that went on yesterday behind the scenes. Not to get into it, but it absolutely wore me down to where I just did not have the physical energy to actually be able to run a show, and so it was canceled. I'm very sorry about that because literally just the day before I told y'all that Hell or High Water streams were going to run nonstop, but there's a lot going on behind the scenes at the moment that is really energy consuming, to just put that out there as clinically as I can. But moving on from that, 1,340 Russian soldiers have been wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 39 APCs, 41 supply trucks, 12 main battle tanks, 17 artillery pieces, 57 drones, 1 cruise missile, and 3 Bobcat skid steers. All in all, it is an absolutely amazing day, and the losses are truly incredible. Moving on from that and into Kharkiv, we did get to see something a little bit unfortunate, however, where the city of Kharkiv was shelled again by the Russians. This happens somewhat frequently, but we did show it this time because we want to remind everyone that the Russians are conducting largely a war of terror against the Ukrainian people living in the country.
Метрів знаходилося багатоповерховий житловий будинок. Там пошкоджені десятки вікон, фасад цієї будівлі було пошкоджено. ГАЗ, ФАБ, ЗУМПК. Також зафіксовано ймовірне використання гібридних літаків з території Білгородської області, з населеного пункту Тамаровка. За статті 438 Кримінального кодексу України порушення законів та звичаїв війни.
And that's the end of the clip, but still showing the unfortunate reality of the Russian terror being conducted against the Ukrainian people. Moving on from that, we also got to see the Ukrainian border guards slamming a couple of Russians up here near Vovchansk. I'll tell you something, those border guards don't like it when you don't show your papers and you illegally enter Ukraine. They are sending the Russians back in boxes. The boxes are made of Ukrainian pine, by the way. They are, in fact, importable into Russia. But we can see here that they are making sure to give the Russians a lot of, I guess you could say, fertilizer to import back into Russia.
Do those pine boxes smell like scented pine cones? Is that like a feature?
I think that might be a feature. Or they might smell like a Russian. You know, who's kind of been sitting out for a minute.
I'm sure that doesn't smell very good.
Remember, folks, meat that's been sitting in the sun in a very moist area for several days most likely has dangerous bacteria in it that can give you typhoid. So if you see anything out there on the battlefield and you're feeling a little hangy, don't do it. You'll get typhoid. But moving on from that, we can see the Ukrainian drones continuing to just slam the Russian positions, and it is good to see. Moving on from that and into our next clip a little bit further down the line, we also got to see a Russian volunteer corps member throwing a little anti-tank mine into a Russian hideout. We see them waiting for their chance in the dark. We hear a couple of pops, and it's about that time to act at this moment. And we hear the gunfire going on as this RDK member starts climbing through the rubble. We can see the present that he's brought to the Russians. Free present, and he goes running, and soon Santa Claus will arrive.
ever go off?
I don't know. It did.
Oh, crap. There it went. I think it even surprised the Ukrainian. Oh, oh dear. Pine box time.
Oh no! Like, oh no! Is that the sound of nice crisp fur getting cut down at this time of year? I don't think it's for a Christmas tree. But moving on out of the Volchansk area, we did see that Santa Claus did finally arrive. Santa Claus coming, right down Santa Claus Lane. But anyways, moving on from that and down to Kupiansk, we were able to see the 92nd slamming some Russians down around E. Y'all want to see the Russians getting slammed? I know y'all want to see the Russians getting slammed.
Oh, Tube said, I heard somebody screaming, ah! It was like the Looney Tunes, like, ah sound. I don't even understand. Like, it's like if you really get hit with something that's pretty bad, it's like, do you really make the Looney Tunes sound? Like, it's kind of always a little odd.
Douche.
So, like that unhinged Tom and Jerry scream whenever, like the shovel smashed him in the face or like the foot or something like that. He's going, ah!
Honestly, man, that's not that far off. But let me see here really quickly if I can get y'all something. I just want y'all to get the North Korean experience here. Let me see if I can actually get that set up for y'all. Oh, look
Man,
at
pull
that.
up that Tom and Jerry scream if you ever get the chance. That would go like perfect if you like play that over one of these clips.
You know what? Tom and Jerry scream. Oh man, let's see if I can find it. Oh yeah, here we go.
Oh. Who did that, by the way? Was that what's his name? Mel Blanc? Or was that him?
It may have been him. I don't know, man. I think it probably was, honestly. But let me see what I get. Here we go. Hang on.
Man, the classic right there. It's not the Wilhelm scream, I don't think. That's the Tom and Jerry one.
Man, oh my goodness, man. We're gonna whip out the copyright infringement North Korean Mickey Mouse. And let me see.
Now, if we get a copyright for that Tom and Jerry scream, I'm gonna go off, man. If we get a copyright for that,
man, that would honestly be sad, man. Honestly, but hey, man, do you want to see like a copyright infringing North Korean Mickey Mouse? Do you want to see it? Do you want to see it?
yes, I do.
Better yet, do you want to see copyright infringement Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse on stage with Xi Jinping? Do you think that would be even cooler?
Yes, I want both.
All right, I'm going to deliver. I'm going to get you both. But moving on from that really quickly, so that way we can round out this clip, and then I'll put it up on screen for just a quick second. We can see the Ukrainians just hammering the Russians in their attempted offensive today. It did not go well for the Russians, to say the least. And like we could see in these clips, a large amount of their vehicles were lost in just the past 24 hours in this attempted offensive. Someone said, I remember that screen being shorter. I remember there being so many varieties of them. Like, I remember it was like Pokemon. Like, you could hear 9 million of them.
There was all kinds of screams. I remember at one point, I think the cat actually spoke at one point in the show.
Oh, man. Until they get
it. It was so stupid, man. It's like whenever they had like the old cartoons, like the ones that never really spoke, like finally say something, you were like shocked at the voice. Is like, what kind of voice is that? Like literally, like they said, "Oh man," it's like, what the hell is that?
All right, Matthew. So this is the moment that you've been waiting for. Now, if I told you, Matthew, what if I told you all Western media is banned in North Korea? What if I told you that? Would you believe that? Would you think that's true?
Oh yeah.
What if I told you the North Korean government openly knew that no one really followed that law, and some people, a lot of people actually, were watching smuggled Western films? Would you believe that as well?
Oh yes, definitely.
And so in an attempt to get these people to not watch this, they actually introduce it into North Korea almost as like an original idea. And so I'm going to introduce to you copyright infringing Mickey, Minnie, and Xi Jinping. This was on stage at a North Korean performance.
Oh man, I gotta say though, out of all like the rip-off versions of Mickey Mouse I've ever seen in my life, like these are actually the closest, believe it or not. North Korea actually ripped us off better than China did.
Dude, they definitely ripped it off better than Far 4 from the Gaza Strip, man. Like, geez, dude,
Oh.
Far 4 was freaking rough, dude. Like, let me go.
It's crazy. You know what's crazy is like every dictatorship out there is trying to rip off the mouse. Out of everything they could rip off, they're always trying to rip off Mickey. And like honestly, like out of all the stuff, North Korea actually did it right. Believe it or not. Oh my God, man! Is that Mr. Hamas Mickey Mouse, the one that stabs people?
Yeah, yeah, dude, this is the one that sat there and said, "We're going to destroy America, inshallah." You know, like that was the one that did that. Like,
Man, this is so cringy too. And to think like the guy that was behind this, I think he's been taken out now, right? It was Sinwar, wasn't it? He was the
Yeah.
one in charge of Hamas.
Oh my
Yeah, he's
God.
been taken out. So I wonder if the Mickey, the violent Mickey, is going to go down with him.
But you know what's crazy, man? You know what's absolutely crazy is that this specific like channel Al-Aqsa like channel or whatever, or channel Al-Aqsa, I forgot what it's called, but they have been bombed by the Israelis since like 2007 9 times, and somehow they've never been able to kill anyone involved with the channel and take it off air. Like, it has been going on that long. It's like a game of cat and mouse. Like, and also, by the way, y'all, just to let y'all know, this was a specific era of the whole like Al-Aqsa TV thing, because what's crazy about this is that they're not scared of Israel, they're not scared of America, but damn it, they're scared of Disney, because Disney sent these people a cease and desist, and that's literally what got them to kill their version of Mickey on their show. I'm not kidding.
Man, that's freaking wild. Man, cease and desist works. Like guns and bombs and stuff like that don't really deter Hamas and the proxy groups. But damn, if you send a cease and desist, they're not messing around with that. I bet you if the IRS sent them a letter saying they owe some back taxes, they'd probably back off too.
Bro, dude, I'm not gonna lie, man. Dude, Disney's got power that other companies wish they had, man. Like, Lockheed Martin can produce some of the deadliest weapons known to man. Hamas will just shrug it off. Disney sends a simple cease and desist, and these people literally have a Mickey killed on air on their television channel. Like, that's a picture from that scene. Like,
also, like someone over there made a picture, said this is not okay, and it's pointing to that mouse right there, that demented looking creature. But seriously though, they had some guy walk in and stab this mouse. Like, that's crazy.
man, I wish I could show. Oh man, I wish I could. You know what? I'm gonna have to show it to y'all. I'm gonna have to show y'all the rant that the mouse did on their show. It's on YouTube. Let me go get it. Far for rant. Oh man, let me see if I can find it, man. Oh jeez. Oh my goodness. Let me. Oh my God. Far for the mouse. Let me just go there. I'm sure we'll find it here, right? Like. Oh yeah. Here we go. Okay, I'm so sorry to put y'all down this rabbit hole, but y'all have to see this. This is literally what their, like, the Palestinian Mickey said on Al-Aqsa TV.
Palestinian Media Watch.
So this,
نحن رواد الغد سنعيد لهذه الأمة مجدها وسنحرر الأقصى إن شاء الله وسنحرر العراق إن شاء الله وسنحرر بلاد المسلمين التي تجتاحها هذه الأثناء القتلة.
Man, I want the old Mickey back. This Mickey's too political. Wait a minute. What did you just say? Wait a minute, back that up. Wait, what?
wait a minute, look, it
He
gets
just
better.
he called out Bush.
Dude, this guy retcons his own, like, rant that he's going in right here. Listen to it. Listen, you'll hear him literally go, well, not really. Listen.
وسننتصر يا شرود يكسروا البيت خلاص مع السلامة.
What's that yellow creature? Is that a person?
That is a person, and that is the same host of the show today. Like, they're still doing it today.
Oh my God.
It's crazy.
What are
man.
they in? Like, what's this room, by the way? They have like children's soft foam play pieces on the wall everywhere.
Yeah, well, to tell you the whole premise of the show, just to let y'all know what the Gaza Strip is kind of like, because this is literally, like, according to the limited ratings they get out of the Strip, Al-Aqsa TV is the most popular children's show in the Strip, and the whole show is premised around, we hate Israelis, we want to kill them all, and kids, don't y'all want to kill Israelis? Like, that is literally, like, that's
sick.
That's literally the whole premise of the show. That's why Far 4 went into a rant right there. He was like, inshallah, we're going to, he's going into the whole rant. And that's what the whole show is about. Like, the whole show demonizes Israelis in general to a comical, evil point, and it tries to literally indoctrinate children. It does indoctrinate children into the same kind of hatred that Hamas wants the entirety of the Gaza Strip to have. And that's
That
why
makes a lot of sense, though, because after seeing Sinwar hold the child up in front of the cameras, holding the AK with like the what was it, like some kind of jihadi like things on or something like
the
that.
Hamas
To see them
bandana.
also, yeah, to see them actually out here like making the TV shows like with Mickey Mouse, like children's characters in it to try to indoctrinate the children, they're putting a lot of effort into that because they just know that if they grow up without the indoctrination, they are probably not going to choose a life of martyrdom like that. They'll probably try to move on. It's just really sick.
Yeah, it is sick. Like, it's incredibly sick. North Korea also did something very similar back in the day. But actually, I got to give credit to the North Koreans. The North Koreans are not as evil as Hamas and Hezbollah because North Korea actually dropped that, like that kind of like indoctrination stuff on children about 20 years ago. Like, that was the last time anything was ever seen like that on North Korean TV. Nowadays, all of the cartoons they produce inside of North Korea are all like educational content, like telling children about science and engineering and like follow traffic laws, like don't get run over by a car. Like, if you ever see a car, like probably be scared of it because you've probably never seen one before. But it's stuff like that. And you actually got to give credit to the North Koreans. Like, they are a sick, evil regime, but at least they don't go to the desperate depths that groups like Hamas and Hezbollah go, where they're literally trying to indoctrinate children to where if they ever get the chance, they're going to try and just kill another group of people just because they heard it on TV, from their favorite character, Farfour, or something like that. It's like, that is really messed up. But moving on from that and into the rest of our news, we were able to see the border guards also hitting Russian forces within the Kupiansk direction as well. Not only in Vovchansk, but in Kupiansk. And check it out, they're clearing Russians out. And also, the Observer, you are correct in that, but at least their cartoons and like their televised media doesn't encourage that any longer. Or if it does, it's wildly subtle.
Somebody just said a minute ago. I don't know if you've like heard this, Enforcer. This guy who's apparently friends with like the Paul brothers or something like that, called KSI, put out some really, really bad like song or something like that. That is horrendous. Like, it's absolutely horrendous. Someone said that little like Mickey Mouse Hamas thing was almost as bad as that song the guy made. Oh my god! Like, actually, like, would have to say that song is pretty bad. Not gonna lie. Like, I'm no music connoisseur, but it's pretty rough.
I have never even heard the song. I'm probably very blessed. Like, maybe. Well, you know one thing I am blessed in? I haven't eaten a lunchly. Like, I know I'm blessed. To be entirely honest. Like,
you haven't eaten that cash grab fake Lunchable?
No. Well, I've heard that apparently it is healthier than a Lunchables, but that's not really saying a lot because a Lunchable isn't exactly, health food. It's very unhealthy in itself. But I will give credit where credit's due. Like, at least it is, according to what I've heard online, slightly healthier than a Lunchable, but it's not like a Whole Foods version of a Lunchable, like it's still got heavily processed, ultra processed elements in it. But anyways, moving on from that and into our next clip, we are also able to see that a Russian soldier apparently got reassigned, and he is not that happy about this.
Службу в разведбате в 174-м, 150-й дивизии. До этого срочная служба, 10-я бригада специального назначения. Пришел по мобилизации 22 сентября. Повестка, я убыл. Проходил службу в разведбате, имею награды, ранения боевые. Нас сейчас перевели в 102-й полк. Без нашего ведома, без ничего просто. Взяли в 9 часов утра, сказали, собирайте вещи и переезжайте. Мы переехали к ним в расположение.
You know what? I'm going to summarize this for all of y'all. He was in one unit. He's been transferred to another, which is pretty much a penal death battalion. And he's now being forced to do endless frontline charges. And he doesn't like it. And he wants to be moved back to his original unit. That's pretty much the summary. But moving on a little bit further on down the line, we also did get to see Ukrainian tanks slamming some Russians down here. And that is an incredibly cool unit emblem right there.
Very interesting.
Bam! And they're slamming them.
Man, it's the damn deep state.
Man, the damn deep state wants you to think that the Ukrainian shells are made of stellanium, but they're wrong.
The Ukrainians are turning the freaking frogs into men.
they're conscripting the freaking frogs, man, or something like that. I'm gonna sit there and say something and get sued about it and then not defend myself, and then when they put in a judgment, I'm gonna say they're trying to destroy me. It's like you could have literally just hired an attorney and like probably gotten away with that. It's like I'm
Oh, he
just
did hire an attorney, I think.
yeah, but after the default judgment was entered, it's like what's the point at that point, man? It's like it's over.
Man, I'm telling you what.
Oh my lord, that was so stupid. Like,
I said my mic didn't even pick it up. I said, "Oh my God, $1 billion."
but
That is crazy, though. $1 billion, like that's wild.
yeah, but I mean, like, if you don't even get an attorney and you don't even defend yourself in the case, like, and they put in a crazy default judgment and it's granted, it's like, can you really complain? I mean, you literally have months to go get an attorney and actually represent yourself in this case. Probably could have gotten away with it, you know? And it's like, instead, he didn't. It's like I can't feel any sympathy for that. That's like, just to tell you all this, in my honest opinion, if you're sued by someone and you know that you have to defend yourself and you don't hire an attorney and you have a default judgment put against you because you're too stupid to go hire an attorney, I have no sympathy for anyone like that. That is just raw stupidity at its most basic element. And like, I can't sit there and go, oh, that's terrible, because it's like you literally didn't even work with the system, and so you got screwed by the system. That's how it works in this country. That's how it works in any country, honestly. But anyways, we can see the Mark 19 doing some work out here. Look at it tossing out those nades, Matthew, at a nice, decent speed of almost supersonic. It's like, it's pretty fast.
It's very nice. Right there in the morning time, nice lighting too. Someone said, some bot came in and said, oh, free speech. Congratulations, bye. Oh, all right.
Okay, well, I will see you around.
I mean,
We'll see you, man.
Bye-bye.
But we did get to see an Mi-24 in flight today on this pick, and it goes hard.
That does go hard, man. These things love to fly like close to the road like that just for the cinematic pics. Like, pick goes hard, feel free to screenshot.
And I have to say that it is a wonderful chance to get a close-up look at the Mi-24, a very impressive helicopter that has helped to maintain Ukrainian freedoms and liberty. But nevertheless, really cool to see, and we love to see it. But moving on from that and further on down the line and into the area of Kherson, we got to see that the Russians blew up their own bridge today. I went into this in depth on our video that we put out earlier today, by the way. Huge thanks to everyone for watching that, because that has now gotten up to, and let me just make sure I'm correct on this. Holy moly, we're about to get we have gotten 1.5 thousand subscribers today now, Matthew. We're getting kind of close to 291,000 subs, but
dang.
250,000 of y'all have watched this video that I put out today. It was the longest one that we've ever made in the short war category. It's 30 minutes long, and y'all watched on average about 10 minutes of it each. Which is insane. Like, we can't believe that. We can't thank y'all enough for enjoying that, because I was really wondering if that would do well today at all, considering that it was 30 freaking minutes long, which is pretty much like the length of documentaries, like in most areas of the world. But nevertheless, they did blow up a bridge today. We have no idea why. I talked about that a lot more in the short war summary, but there's really not a lot to add to it. We did also get to see Ukrainian partisans at work. And, I have heard that song before, and it's actually not that bad, but here comes the Atesh, and they're about to do something really bad to the Russians. Oh my goodness, another signal box! Oh my god! Like, it's a dude, Russian railway engineers are like, when will this nightmare end? Like, I guess it just never stops. Like, half the signals are out everywhere all the time nowadays. Man, terrible stuff. But moving on from that, we also did get to hear of a Russian drone breaching NATO airspace again today, near the area of the Danube River. Not really a lot to add to that, kind of status quo, still aggravating, but still status quo. And we were able to hear that the Black Sea Fleet did officially declare defeat today, as the former head of the Roscosmos, Dmitry Rogozin, admitted that the Russian Black Sea Fleet had changed its location because of attacks by Ukrainian drones permanently. The Russian Navy has now moved from Sevastopol to Novorossiysk, having lost half of its combat power in its most major strategic port within the Black Sea. The Russian Navy can largely be considered defeated at this point in the war. A major victory for Ukraine, and great to hear the Russians finally admitting that things have gone poorly in that area. Moving on down into Lebanon, though, we were able to see that the Israeli Air Force is continuing to conduct large-scale airstrikes in the area of Beirut, trying to knock out the Iranian proxy forces that have been causing the world a great deal of headache. And some people have been very sad to see, but nevertheless, I can promise you all that another airstrike will happen tomorrow, and more Hezbollah leaders will be wiped out then. Moving on from that and down into Israel, we can also see that that probably won't end up happening in return to the Israelis, with some of their leaders getting taken out, because, Mr. President, a second THAAD launcher has been seen in Israel. Here's the clip. The THAADs are amazing.
The Chad system.
Don't we love the U.S. Armed Forces, folks? Give it up for the U.S. Armed Forces.
Man, you gotta love it. I'm telling you what, just military equipment crawling everywhere in Israel at this point.
Man, and I'm telling you, man, they're not only crawling, they're climbing, and they're climbing high. But moving on out of that, we're still waiting for larger things to happen in the Middle East, so not a lot's going on in this area at the moment. So we're now going to return y'all right back up to Ukraine and cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 970 of The Wire. And so, without further ado, and getting rid of the English track, I wish you health, fellow Ukrainians. Here is the speech.
Speech, please.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці, українки. Коротко про цей день. Перше, я хочу відзначити усіх наших захисників неба, які щоночі збивають шахеди. Цей рік майже кожна ніч, іноді і ранок, і день загроза шахедів. Ударних дронів, які Росії дав Іран, і які стали одним з основних знарядь російського терору проти України. І які, на жаль, росіяни та іранці удосконалюють. Ми завжди говорили партнерам, що треба бути більш рішучими в протидії таким злочинним альянсам. Тільки на цьому тижні, від понеділка по сьогодні, кожна доба шахеди. За одну добу, 18 жовтня, було 129 таких дронів. А загалом від початку цього року Росія застосувала вже більш ніж 6130 шахедів. Значну частину наші воїни збивають. Багато допомагає РЕП, але не у всьому. І саме тому потрібно більше тиску на російську вже здатність виробляти таку зброю. Потрібна можливість знищувати і бази зберігання шахедів, і всю наявну інфраструктуру їх виробництва та логістики. Терористи, на жаль, вміють використовувати час, який дає їм нерішучість вільного світу. Так само і зараз. Нова загроза – злочинний союз Росії та Північної Кореї. Я вдячний тим лідерам та представникам держав, які не заплющують очі і говорять відверто про цю співпрацю заради більшої війни. Про постачання зброї з Північної Кореї в Росію. Про те, чим росіяни можуть відплатити Пхеньяну за цю допомогу. На жаль, нестабільності та загроз може стати значно більше після того, як Північна Корея буде вчитись сучасній війні. Зараз ми маємо чіткі дані про те, що в Росію постачають і людей з Північної Кореї. І це вже не просто робітники для виробництв, але й військові. І ми чекаємо нормальну, чесну, сильну реакцію партнерів на це. Фактично, це вступ ще однієї держави у війну проти України. У всіх є можливість побачити докази і завдяки супутникам, і завдяки відео, яке вже приходить з Росії. Треба займатися цим, реагувати, протидіяти. І не можна давати злу вирости, якщо світ мовчатиме зараз, і якщо нам доведеться стикатися із солдатами з Північної Кореї на фронті так само постійно, як захищатись від шахедів, то це точно нікому у світі не піде на користь і лише подовжить цю війну. Війну, яка має бути завершена справедливо і якнайшвидше. Ще одне. За цей тиждень у нас є підтримка від партнерів за планом перемоги. Дякую Франції, Литві, нашим партнерам, нашим нордікам та багатьом іншим нашим союзникам в Євросоюзі. Є дуже хороші сигнали від Сполучених Штатів. Ми чуємо вже риторику, її зміни. Ми очікуємо на приїзд команди з Вашингтону, щоб на всіх робочих рівнях працювати по пунктах плану перемоги. Домовились щодо кількох нових пакетів підтримки, і оборонної підтримки, і енергетичної підтримки. І це дається нам, дається дуже непросто. Але по-іншому ворога не перемогти. Я дякую всім, хто нам допомагає. І нам треба працювати тільки разом і тільки у єдності, щоб для нас всіх був результат, для всієї України. Але поки це відбувається, на жаль, в тилу тут в Україні стаються речі, з якими жодних ворогів не треба. Це реально внутрішній ворог. Те, що відбувається з МСЕК, медичними, соціальними, експертними комісіями та нахабством людей, зокрема прокурорів, які скористались своїми зв'язками з МСЕК та пооформляли собі фальшиві інвалідності. Я чекаю від правоохоронців, зокрема, передусім СБУ, ДБР, Офісу Генпрокурора, відповідних, швидких, жорстких рішень. Призначив РНБО. Слава Україні!
And Heroes Slava. And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 970 of the news of the war in Ukraine. And that is moving us on into the second segment of this stream, where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And it is an incredibly fun segment. And not only that, on an incredibly good night. Let me go really quickly and pull up the stream, because for some reason it doesn't allow us to see the fundraiser and the total and everything in the control room. So I don't know why. Like, that's really stupid. So let me see here. We have gotten up to $3,726 on this fundraiser, an absolutely amazing number. $700 above the goal, and we've once again succeeded in reaching the goal. The LSA has never missed a goal in its entire 970-day history, and we will make sure to never miss a goal in the remainder of the history of the LSA, for however long that may last. But Matthew, tell me, who are the top donors that we've had since the last time we've called them out, and also what else do we have on top of that?
We actually have no more top donors of the night. And also, I was being dramatic there. But once again, huge shout out to everybody that's donated tonight. We don't have any more top donors to call off for our final segment. But once again, huge shout out to everybody that has donated, small or large, because you have brought us up to $3,726 raised, which is well above the goal. And the LSA has had another big success on a Sunday night fundraiser stream. So a big thanks to you all once again. And with that, we are now moving on to our poll question here. And it says, Romania says another Russian drone breached its airspace today. And is it Russian incompetence or is it intentional? So about 35% said Russia is really incompetent, while 34% said Russia is doing it intentionally, and 24% said it seems like a mix of both. And honestly, I would have to say that, in my opinion, I think Russia actually is really this incompetent. They're letting the drones fly around like crazy. They're even hitting Belarus, of all places, which is supposed to be an ally of Russia. And they're also hitting Romania, and they're hitting other countries as well. So I don't think maybe they're doing it intentionally 100% of the time. And honestly, it's probably seeming like a mix of both. Sometimes it's incompetence, and sometimes it could be on purpose. So I'm with the 24%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I'm with the 24% as well. The Russians are probably just doing a little mix of both. Probably doing it deliberately in some instances and not deliberately in others. But still, regardless the case, it is a violation of NATO sovereignty, and we should respond to it the same way regardless. Shoot them down as soon as they violate NATO airspace and start to threaten or jeopardize NATO lives. I think that's the general way that should be dealt with, and I wish that we would start to operate in that kind of a mindset. But nevertheless, I hope that does address that incredibly well, at least the best I can. And with that, we are on into some questions. And Matthew, what do we have?
All right, so jumping into our final question segment of the night. We have no super chats tonight, of course, because it was a Sunday night fundraiser stream, so we never collect super chats on these nights, so it's all to the fundraiser, of course. And our first live chat question here is going to go to Rebellion, who says, do you think Japan will assist if North Korea attacks South Korea, or maybe China steps in?
If Japan would assist, that's an interesting question. I think they might or might not. It's really hard to gauge that, because you see, the thing is that with giving an answer like that, we would have to kind of get in the shoes of the Japanese government and understand where they're at, and then figure out how to give an answer to that. And that is a great question, but the problem is that we haven't heard any statements from the Japanese government showing that they would want to get involved or that they wouldn't want to get involved and they would just operate in a defensive role entirely. We have no statements to work off of at this moment. So let me see if I can pull up really quickly Japan news and see if anyone's made any statements. So, Japan's governing party headquarters is attacked with firebombs All right.
Damn.
Let's see.
Okay. I didn't hear about that.
Ban polls for Japan's ruling coalition. By the way, y'all may not know this. Not to talk about politics in Japan, like talking about the sides and everything, but politics in Japan is actually an incredibly heated topic, a lot like it is in America. A lot of people don't know that because a lot of people have this like external mindset of Japan as being this really controlled, really upstanding and morally correct kind of a country, but the reality is that it actually is pretty chaotic. You know, like Shinzo Abe didn't just get shot for, you know, just a fluke. Like it's like that in Japan a good bit. There are a lot of politicians that conduct pretty interesting kinds of corruption. There was one who lied about train tickets so that way he could embezzle the money. Like there's a whole bunch of crazy stuff that goes on in Japan politically. So hearing that headquarters was firebombed isn't really that new. But let's see. Oh, the USS George Washington's in Japan. So that's cool. So there is an aircraft carrier group right by Korea at the moment. And let's see here. Well, I mean, Dipped, I'll tell you something. There's not really a lot about it at the moment, at least on the main news headlines. So let me see if I can pull up Japan, Korea news, and let me see if we get anything on
Also,
that.
I have seen a couple of people say that Japan is allegedly prohibited by their constitution from getting involved in foreign conflicts. I'm not sure if that's true, but if it is, that would give us our answer.
That is not true. That was true up until a few years ago, and that specific article in their constitution was repealed, meaning that that is no longer a limitation on the Japanese. So I hope that kind of like clarifies that because that is not a thing anymore, and that's why the Japanese military has been rapidly expanding and has included their first technical aircraft carrier. And let me go show you all that. The Japanese Navy. The Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force is exactly what it's called. That is absolutely correct. Let me go show you other light aircraft carriers. And let me go see if I can find them. And we should be able to find them very soon. Very soon. And here we go. Oh, come on. Come on, come on, come on. We got to find the ships. The Fleet Air Force. Let me see here. It's hard to find them, actually. Let's see here. List of active ships. Here we go. By the way, this is still the flag of the Japanese Navy, in case y'all didn't know. Some people may remember that. But anyways, moving on from that, they have some decent diesel-electric attack submarines, the Yashio class. Pretty cool. And let's see here. They got the Soryu class, another attack submarine. These are mostly... they're all diesel-electric submarines or lithium-ion submarines. Meaning that most of them are pretty much like coastal patrol submarines. They're not really meant for, you know, far out operations from Japan. But they do have, very interestingly, two kind of like aircraft carrier-ish vessels, which is incredibly interesting. They have the Hyuga, and they also have the Izumo. And the Izumo can actually carry F-35s. So technically this thing is very close. Like if I could give a comparison to this thing in the Western world, it's very similar to the Charles de Gaulle in terms of what it can do, at least with the F-35s on board. So Japan technically does have at this point about 2 aircraft carriers, and these things are relatively new. They were commissioned in 2011 and 2017. So these things are very, very new. This is the first time that Japan has had any kind of aircraft carrying vessel since really the end of World War II, when most of their, well, pretty much all of their aircraft carriers were destroyed in that war. So they are growing out their Navy, and that specific constitutional provision was repealed. And let me see if they actually mention anything about that here on the Wikipedia, because I think they did somewhere on here. Let's see, 1993. We need to get up a little bit here. Yeah. So let's see here. Well, I be dip. Where in the world would they include that? Man, dude. Why in the world is this so tough to find things that I need? Let's see. Japanese self-defense amendment. Let me see here if I can get that for y'all. Let's see here. What is the 9th Amendment? Is Article 9 still in effect? So let's see, that was 2023, but we need to get to, here we go. So If I'm correct, at least from what I heard, this was repealed, which was an interesting kind of a thing when it happened. So, what do you see there? Post-occupation U.S. military station in Japan. Okay, hang on. Avoided a reinterpretation, which gave more power. Okay, so hang on here. Oh man, hopefully I'm right with this, because if not, I'll have to retcon that statement and say that is not a true statement. Anyone who says that I ever said that was a traitor to the party and everything. So let me see if I can find if it was repealed. Let's see. Okay, so this is actually still in standing at this point. So I am wrong, and y'all are right. This the Japanese actually cannot get involved in offensive action. So the Japanese, by constitutional law at the moment, would have to sit that out and would not be able to help out the South Koreans. A little bit of a long, like, answers searching kind of a deal right there, but still, that is the exact answer. They cannot get involved by constitutional law in Japan. And so with that, I hope that does
So the
address
viewer was correct about the constitutional thing, like they're not able to.
I was wrong, actually, because I said that they could get involved because that constitutional amendment was repealed, and I was actually incorrect. That constitutional amendment is still standing. It was attempted to be repealed a while ago, and it wasn't. And I guess when I heard that, I just heard or maybe read an article that made it sound like it was repealed, but it was not. So they cannot get involved in a Korean conflict.
So if Japan, for example, if Japan is not only like, let me rephrase that actually, unless Japan is defending itself, it can't get involved in anything outside of its own affairs?
Correct.
Wow, that's really restrictive. That's an interesting article there.
Yeah, it's Article 9 of their constitution, which specifically prohibits them from using armed force to I think it was something like the exact wordage was to dispute any international conflicts or something along those lines. So they cannot operate offensively. They can only operate their military defensively in the defense of Japan.
Well, that's crazy, actually. So Japan would be no use whatsoever to the West if something broke out unless they were directly attacked.
Pretty much, yeah. Like, unless if something of their territory is directly threatened, and only then could they respond if they were attacked, can they do anything.
That's a big change from what they used to do back in the day. Was, they went down there to Pearl Harbor and let us have it. I'm glad they actually changed that one.
Well, interestingly enough, they kind of didn't change that, Matthew. We kind of changed it for them because when we occupied Japan post-war, because there was a pretty long-lasting American occupation of Japan, which people don't really know about. American occupation of Japan. And so here we go. Let me go grab that really quickly. So here we go. This is the occupation of Japan, which lasted all the way from, let's see here, 1945 to 1952. So it lasted pretty much all the way through the end of the 1940s and almost all the way through the Korean War. The entirety of the mainland of Japan was occupied by U.S. forces.
Interesting. That's very interesting. That was a smart thing to put in place, but it could come back to bite us later if we do need Japan's help. But I guess it's better to be safe than sorry.
Yeah, it was a very interesting time in Japan because we really started to lay out a lot of what Japan would end up being now. Like completely destroying the imperial cult for the large part. Like the emperor still exists, but not in the way they used to. We also started to lay out a lot of their laws. We were the one who pretty much put Article 9 in their constitution. We completely reformed the Japanese police, and we really, because of so many American soldiers always being present in Japan, we really shaped a lot of modern Japanese culture. Like, for example, anime, which people, I'm not really big into anime, but this is something very interesting here. Anime, which is a very big Japanese medium in the modern day that's enjoyed not only by the Japanese, but people around the world, actually came into being because of American comic books that were introduced to Japan, and the Japanese, along with their animation that existed before the war, which looked nothing like anime, went, oh wow, this is really cool. Like, in American cartoons are pretty neat. We ought to make our own. And then that's how anime was born. It was pretty much born out of an American-Japanese cultural, like, infusion. Another interesting thing that came out of Japan, and at least American occupation, was the battle for ramen. Like, ramen almost died in American occupation and afterwards as well, because America introduced incredibly cheap grain. And so bread became incredibly popular in Japan, and it was actually the fear of bread pretty much killing all Japanese noodles and, any kind of other cuisine that involved rice noodles and wheat noodles that ramen and instant ramen was born and really brought about ramen back into the mainstream.
Now, see, that was a blessing because the instant ramen is a lifesaver, the 50-cent ramen in the cup. Without that, we'd be in some trouble.
Yeah, and also another cool thing is that America actually wanted to destroy the Zaibatsus. Do you know what a Zaibatsu is, Matthew?
No, I don't.
It is an industrial monopoly, pretty much, that exists in conjunction with the state government and kind of pretty much controls every single facet of that part of the economy. America understood that the Zaibatsus were a very socially destructive force in Japan, and not only that, wasn't really the most beneficial thing for Japan. And so we tried to bust up the Zaibatsus and create in the Constitution of Japan a government that wouldn't really be conducive, or a society that wouldn't really be conducive to the Zaibatsus. But the Zaibatsus actually ended up coming back, and a lot of y'all will probably still know them. Yamaha, Toyota, Mitsubishi, they're all still around. They were around before World War II. They were the monopolies of Japan before World War II, and they're still the monopolies of Japan after World War II. And think about it. Yamaha, like everyone always jokes, Yamaha produces everything from pianos to jet skis to motorcycles, literally anything. That's because they're a monopoly in Japan. They produce all that stuff because they're one of the largest industrial monopolies in the country. That's also another interesting thing, is that while we tried to destroy them with Zaibatsus, we pretty much gave them a perfect breeding ground after the war. And so that's why Japan is usually considered by a lot of people kind of like a hyper-capitalist, almost sort of a dystopia, because the companies pretty much dictate how culture and life exists for a lot of Japanese salarymen and women that live in the country today.
Well, don't worry, we'll get there soon too. So don't count us out yet.
Excuse me. I'm your Amazon manager. Did you piss for 30 seconds instead of 20? That's a mark against you, pal.
It's like, I don't know if it's like this in Japan or not, but it feels like once the country starts getting hyper capitalized like that, like mega corporations and stuff, pretty much everybody starts becoming a renter, which, everybody has their thoughts about that. It's either good or bad. But owning nothing certainly isn't like what you imagine in a capitalist society. It seems a little going to the contrary of it. And then everybody works for one of the massive conglomerations, or you work for nobody, which is certainly not my idea of like a perfect world of capitalism, but I guess for some people it is.
Maybe for the people who are running those companies. But here in America, we're supposed to have things that stop that, like antitrust laws and things like that, to make sure that the little guy.
Antitrust laws? What's that?
Well, Matthew, that's when you that's when it's a bad thing to trust people, and so you crush them. That's
Yes, those antitrust laws. The politicians want to ensure that we never trust them, so they introduced antitrust laws.
Yes, very, very smart practice. But beyond that, America should never turn into what Japan turned into, right, folks? Well, I would hope not, to be entirely honest with you. I don't really feel like that's like a really political take. I think everyone can kind of agree that, everyone would like to have the hope of eventually running their own small business and succeeding in everything with that, and not having to work for, Walmart or Amazon or someone else. But, maybe some people like it another way. I don't know. It's America. It's a free country. Y'all can think what y'all want. But moving on from that, Japan is a very interesting country. Like, we could talk endlessly about Japan post-war and how it evolved and how it developed. We could also talk about Korea, South Korea specifically, and how it evolved and developed, because it's all very interesting. It has a lot to do with the United States and our involvement in the region. And not to sound like the Russians to Eastern Europe, where they're like, we made you. But America really did make South Korea and Japan into what they are today. Although I will be honest, though, South Korea kind of made itself into what it is. We were there during all of that, but they really were a lot more free to do what they wished. Japan kind of had everything laid out for them post-war by us, and then because of that, they ended up turning into what they are today. That's kind of the way to kind of explain those two countries. And Taiwan, they did their thing. Like, we really didn't have a lot to do with them at all at any point, and they just kind of evolved really successfully on their own. The Philippines, we didn't really do them well. Like, I'm going to be honest, like, we kind of just left at the end of World War. The Philippines was a U.S. territory leading up to World War II. They were invaded by the Japanese, occupied by the Japanese. We liberated the Philippines, that we didn't really sit around a long time and try to stabilize the country, rebuild it, and then release it into the world. We pretty much just threw the Philippines to the wolves. We were like, well, it's the end of the war. Good luck, folks. You're independent now. And that didn't really do the Philippines that well governmentally and economically. But they're doing okay now. But for a long time, they were struggling a little bit. But that's really how the entirety of East Asia went: South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, and the Philippines post-war. But America was involved here and there a bit, especially with Japan. Like, we were involved a lot in Japan. Also, one more thing, I want to make sure to clarify this misnomer. That, from what I know, this is a historical misnomer. A lot of people think that the Japanese are huge fans of baseball, in the modern day because of America occupying Japan post-war, and that's untrue. Baseball was actually very popular in Japan from about the early 1900s forwards, and so that's why, and I'm going to tell you all an absolute batshit crazy idea we had in World War II. We were going to get Babe Ruth on the radio to broadcast a transmission to the entirety of the Empire of Japan, and Babe Ruth was going to tell them, as the baseball legend he was, that he was disappointed in them and they ought to not fight. Like, we legitimately
That's not a bad idea, actually, man. That's kind of what we did with Dennis Rodman in North Korea. That's actually not a bad idea at all.
Man, honestly though, think about how stupid that is, man. Like, you got a whole bunch of imperial cultist fanatics fighting this war. You're gonna get Babe Ruth on the radio, and he's gonna go, "Oh, come on, guys. I thought we were men here. Like, we could settle this over a game of baseball." It's like, would that really
Is that how he
work?
sounded? Man, I can get another guy on the horn that sounds just like him, too, to tell him that if you want. Come on, Jack. I mean, you call it off, man. I mean, we don't need all this. You know the thing. Anyway.
You want to hear what he actually sounded like?
Sure.
Here is the most famous
Oh my lord, I hate how it does that. But anyways, here's Babe Ruth.
baseball player of all time, the one and only Babe Ruth.
Bill, may I ask some questions, please?
On what, Babe?
That's what Babe Ruth sounded like, man.
Man, I'm not gonna lie. Like, hearing another grown man say, "Well, about what, babe?" and then another guy starts talking, that's a little bit different.
Well, it was a different time, man. It was a different time.
What about that, babe? Yeah, I mean, it sounds good to me.
Man, but listen to this guy. Honestly, man, he sounded like the real life version of Fred Flintstone. I'm not gonna lie.
On the story you just told.
Well, go right ahead.
Let's take the first story, the one about Harry Oakes and me.
Okay.
That's what he sounded like. Imagine him getting on the radio, man, and speaking in Japanese. Like, as bad as that would sound, he'd be like, "Oh, Konimachi." He'd be like, "Bro, this is terrible." It's like, get off the radio. Dude, this would be horrendous, man, if they actually tried that. I think they would have. I think if that had happened, man, there would be an alternate history where Japan was not into baseball, they were into American football or something like that, man, because that would have killed baseball in Japan, dude, to hear him on the radio. I mean, I gotta ask you a question, like a real question here. It's like, it's like that wouldn't have worked, man. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that at least okay. I mean, about the whole Japan post-war thing, and also a little bit about Babe Ruth. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next question here is going to go to Tom Exman, who said, "I wonder how Russia will handle the DPRK soldiers defecting right in Russia." I wonder about that, Thomas. Well, I was wondering earlier as well. Are they going to perform field executions, like just eliminate the guys right there on the field for trying to defect, or are they going to send them back to North Korea to let the North Koreans really take care of them and make an example out of them? I'm really curious about that. But Enforcer, what do you think?
The North Koreans are probably going to be completely in control of the justice that is dispensed to the North Korean soldiers. So the Russians, if they catch them, they're not going to be summarily executing them. They're going to hand them back over to the North Koreans because they are North Korean citizens, and the North Koreans are going to have the final say over them. And a North Korean political officer will decide if there needs to be summary judgment, pretty much execution on the battlefield or near the battlefield. And if they didn't want to do that, they probably would ship them back to North Korea to be put into a gulag, or they would put them into a penal unit on the front lines on the spot, and then they would fight in the penal unit from that point forward, which is subject to summary execution by the political officer if they were to try and defect at that point or surrender. And so I hope that addresses that fairly well. I don't ever think the Russians would start executing them, because that would cause some pretty sour relations in between them and the North Koreans, because we have to remember, the North Koreans do view themselves, just to put this out there, as racially superior to everyone on Earth. Like, that's a big thing to them. And so why in the world would some, in their mind, inferior Russian have the authority to execute a North Korean for deserting their unit. Like, that wouldn't make any sense in the North Korean mind, and that would immediately start to break down the North Korean-Russian kind of a little arrangement that they had there if the Russians started to summarily execute North Koreans. Like, that's at least how I think it would go. Maybe it would go different because they are being equipped by the Russians, so I don't know, maybe there's a little less autonomy on the North Korean side than I'm assuming, but probably not. Also, I did see Adam McLean say North Koreans are racist. They are. Like, that's actually like a state propaganda thing, is like the purity of the North Korean bloodline, and it can't be tarnished by anyone, anywhere. They actually banned movies. They've actually banned a couple of movies in North Korea because, and this is the craziest thing, man, a North Korean film studio would film this movie and then they'd censor it after they're done filming. Like, one of them was called Brothers in 1957, and it just insinuated a relationship in between a North Korean woman and a Russian man, and they banned it from being aired in North Korea because they said that that is tarnishing the Korean bloodline, because, you know, there's like an insinuation that a Korean Russian child could be born out of that, and that's a no-go right there. You just can't have that. And so they threw it out. And it's like, that's crazy, man. Like, that is crazy to have a country that is that, like, that racist, honestly. You know, like, like, a lot of people don't get that. North Korea probably is, in the modern day, the most racist country on earth because it's the only one that literally outlaws the intermarrying of North Koreans to any other race, like, or any other ethnicity at all. They're the only country in the world that does that at this point, I believe, which is bizarre. But anyways, with that, I hope that does kind of give you all a little bit of background on that side of things, because they would probably not like it if the Russians started executing North Koreans. And so with that, I hope that does address that pretty well, at least the best I can. And we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Cameron, who says, how is North Korean equipment, their army equipment? Last I thought it was not so advanced.
From what we're guessing, it apparently isn't, because they are not using their own equipment when they're in Russia. We actually saw them on film being issued Russian equipment, which may be suggesting that their equipment generally is truly out of date, and so they're not willing to use it on the battlefield, and instead they would like to get an upgrade from the Russians, limited amount of good equipment. Or really their limited amount of subpar equipment, to be entirely honest. So we think it's not that good. Like, we still think that most of the North Korean army is kind of stuck in the 60s and the 70s. Let me see if I can show y'all that. KPA Korea, Korean People's Army. There we go. And this is their emblem of the Korean People's Army, and this is the flag of the Korean People's Army. And so let me scroll on down, and let me show y'all their standard fighting uniform, if I can. Well, here's one from 2005. We still generally assume that most North Korean soldiers are equipped like this, with their 1960s-ish looking uniform that looks like it's literally from the People's Liberation Army, and the standard AKMs that most of them were equipped with. We think that most of them are still equipped like this. Very few of them seem to have any kind of modern equipment, and the little bit of modern equipment that we see seems to only be visible at the parades that are held in Pyongyang. But once again, here's another. Does this guy have a beard?
I can't tell.
I can't tell. It kind of looks like he has stubble. But let's see here. Man, those BTRs, man, I've seen a million of them get blown up at this point. It's like, I wouldn't trust them. Let me see if I can find y'all some more pictures here. Dude, no way.
Nice. That's the high tech right there.
Dude, the North Koreans had narco subs before narco subs were cool. This is a semi-submersible infiltration craft. That is literally what the narco subs are by technicality. This is a narco sub, y'all.
Also, you know how often this thing's used? There's literally like algae and green goop growing in the water below it. I don't think it's been in the water for ages.
Well, this thing is a museum piece. That's probably why. But still,
at least clean the water outside the museum, at least.
I mean, I would say that would be an improvement. But man, I'm just trying to find y'all like pictures of. Let's see here. Central Military Band. Let's see here. Korean conflict and Military Foundation Day. List of wars involving North Korea. This can't be long, can it? When it said list of wars involving North Korea, and then they included the Joseon period. That's not even North Korea. That's the Kingdom of Korea. That's stupid. Anyways, skipping that one, and moving on down to North Korea itself. They were in the Korean War. a little bit of the Vietnam War. The Korean DMZ conflict, just to clarify this for all of y'all, was just when they like sent in spies and stuff into South Korea to try and kill Youngman Rhee or something like that, I think. It wasn't really that big of a deal. The Yom Kippur War? What? Wait a minute, they were involved? I never even knew that. And then the
They were in the
Bush War.
Ugandan Bush War? No, wait, but Tanzania, UNLA, and North Korea was involved in that. That's kind of interesting. Every single one of them says defeat.
Man,
All
wait,
of them.
I gotta go see. How are they involved in the Yom Kippur War? There were no North Korean commanders, obviously. And they're not mentioned in the forces down here either. So, what in the hell? I think they were only involved in like thoughts and prayers kind of support because they did not take any casualties. They weren't there really. Like, I don't know why in the world they're included. I wish I knew. Like, I really wish I knew why they were included because this is interesting. But what about the Ugandan Bush War? So it does say, right? Wait a minute, where does it say it here? Belligerents. Wait a minute. Hold up. North Korea was on the same side as the side America was supporting? What? Dude, no way. It was an American-North Korean friendship. Man, we beat them with the power of friendship, and we still got defeated. But let's see here. Commanders and leaders. Units involved. The Korean People's Army was legitimately on the ground with 30 guys. So I don't think
30 guys.
Yeah, 30 guys, man. They sent like a platoon over there. And then in 1985, it got somewhere up to like a company or a battalion-sized unit, but it still wasn't a lot of them.
Man, it was probably just 30 guys sent out just to get a bite to eat or something like that. Like over there, they were so starving. They're like, send us out for just a minute. Grabbed a little Twinkie and headed back.
Man, you know what they were out there in Uganda looking for? Man, they were probably looking for ways to cook meth better, something. They're like, we had to find this out for our homeland, man. And they're like, look, folks, like, I know Uganda isn't really like the meth capital of the world. That's actually Alabama, but we have to find a way to cook pure meth. They didn't know about Walter White yet, man. They were just trying to find a lead in there. Like, Uganda's our best bet. Like, something's going on there, we'll go there. But I can't believe that, man. Like, 30 North Koreans were allowed out of the country just to wander around in Uganda. That's weird. But anyways, yeah, that's all they were in. Really, the only war they really were involved in was the Korean War. The Vietnam War, I don't ever think they took casualties in the Vietnam War. Yeah, see, once again, like 200 guys, so they're like all advisors and just like observers and stuff, so no casualties involved there. Wait a minute. Oh my god, there's 14 dead? Oh my god, we killed them! Like, I didn't even know. Like, when did we kill any North Koreans? We apparently killed a few. Like, I cannot believe that, Matthew. Can you believe this? I can't believe it.
That's correct. I never heard about that, really, to be honest with you.
Man. And this is excluding the Grunk.
Grunk?
Yeah, look, see, total military wounded and dead, excluding Grunk.
Oh, that's, what the hell is that?
Man, and then on the other side, it's excluding Fark and Fank.
Wait a minute, zoom in. Hold on, let me try to zoom in on my end and see if I can see it. Excluding Fark and Fank.
That's the
what is that?
Forces.
Is it really a real thing? Like
Yeah.
Fark and Fank? I thought it was just Fark.
Apparently it's the Royal Cambodian Armed Forces. So
Since when was it called a Fank?
I don't know, man. But what the hell's Grunk? Oh my lord, dude! The minor players in the Vietnam War had the craziest names, man. You had real people like North Vietnam and South Vietnam and the United States and China, and then you just have Grunk and Fark and Fank. Dude, like, imagine, man, if Grunk got a hold of some trank thinking it was Fank. That's
crazy. I've never heard Fank. I've obviously heard Fark. Like I know that, but Fank, that's a new one.
I've never heard of either, to be entirely honest. I've never heard of Grunk. Like, the Royal Government of National Union of Kombucha, also called Grunk. Dude.
Kombucha? Isn't that new like drink that the young people like to drink?
Yeah, I think so. But you know what's even better, Matthew? The Grunk was based on a coalition, the Funk.
Oh my god, it's like a joke. Let's see here. The Communist Party of Kombucha. Let's see here. Trying to find something else. Let's see. Well, that's actually the only funny thing on the page. Actually, I think you already pointed it out.
Imagine it being a guy, a mercenary hired in to go to Southeast Asia, and you're like, all right, who are we fighting? You're fighting the funk. It's like, what the? It's like, what the hell is
And then
that?
drink
Like,
kombucha.
dude, you know, someone was
The
probably like,
hippie.
the funk just wear deodorant. It's or something like that.
The fork and the fank with the kombucha.
The Vietnam
With a little
War.
bit of funk.
The Vietnam War had some people in it, like, so the Fulro. What is this? What are these groups? Dude, like, they had the stupidest names during the Vietnam War for some of these groups. The Grunk, the Fark, the Fank, and the Funk. Like, you cannot literally come up with better stuff to end videos with. And y'all are going to be hearing these the next time I make a video tomorrow. I'm gonna make you. I'm gonna tell y'all, if you made it to the end of the video, put one of these down. I'm gonna tell y'all which one, and I can't wait to see it. Like, I can't wait to see the whole comment section filled with like the Funk or Grunk or Fark or Fank or something like that. Oh my lord!
I'm not gonna lie though, like the names may be funny, but they did whoop our ass pretty good over there. I'm not gonna lie.
Dude, nah, man, the Fark and the Fank were beating the ass out of Grunk. Like they were on different sides, man. The Fark and the Fank were on our side.
They did, but ultimately though, it didn't end up too well for us.
I mean, maybe not, but still, well, you know what, Matthew? You say it didn't go well for us, and I just want to put this out there: 58,000 and 281 Americans did die in the war, which is a pretty high number. But on the contrary, however, 850,000 North Vietnamese soldiers died in the war. So I don't know, like yes, we did lose a decent number, but at least in the terms of the KD ratio, which also, by the way, historically, this may be technically overinflated due to how the kill count was all that mattered in Vietnam, so some people would really start to inflate it a good bit whenever they report it back. But nevertheless, that isn't a wildly high KD, and I wouldn't have any reason to really doubt it. I'm sure it's a little lower, but still at the same time, it can't be that much lower because, you know, usually the United States always has a wildly high kill to death ratio for the amount of forces we lose versus what the enemy forces lose. So probably not that far off, but still, I mean, like, you know, it's like we did leave and South Vietnam fell, but did they really whip our ass, or were we whipping their ass the whole time and then we just gave up because it took too long to whip their ass completely? Like, I think it's the latter rather than the former.
Maybe so. But ultimately though, it was a loss for us, I would say.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, like, if you're like just to like not make this sound like crass, but if you're slaughtering over there for 10 years, you know, and while we are taking losses, we are absolutely slamming them, and then we just decide to leave, and then they win against South Vietnam because we're not there. I don't know. I would say that's more of a draw than a defeat. Because, I mean, when you look at the raw numbers here, I mean, there's no way that we were just getting slammed, you know, because we were legitimately, at least in the ratios, slamming these North Vietnamese forces till the cows came home.
We slammed them, like we put the hurt on them, but at the same time, like the fact that the entire Korea is not like basically under the control of the West, that's a loss in my book.
Vietnam, you mean?
Yeah, Vietnam, I meant to say.
Man, you said Korea. I was like, hold up.
I was sitting over here trying to read a new Twitter post. I just saw it pop up a second ago, so I got distracted. But yeah, I meant Vietnam.
What is it, Matthew? What is it? Spill the tea.
It was something someone sent me about someone that was in our chat, and I was trying to read it real quick. It was about that text I sent you. I was like, interesting. I was like, I'm not going to say it on stream, but I'll tell you after stream.
Is there an easy and quick way for me to see that though? Because I would like to be abreast of this.
Man, it's a long story. Like, I'll have to tell you after stream.
Okay, all right. Well, we will wait for that after stream. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And also, word guy said victory was never defined. L. Maybe. I mean, what do y'all think? Let me know. Do y'all think that Vietnam was a draw or a defeat? Like, it obviously wasn't a victory, of course, but do y'all consider it a draw or a defeat? I would like to know. But anyways, with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
All right, and our third to last question of the night is going to go to ES, who says, what are your opinions on North Korean troops seeing combat for the first time?
I would say it's probably not going to end well for them because such a green and inexperienced force that really doesn't have conventional fighting training or at least experience for about the past 70 to 80 years, there's no way that they can do well. They just don't have the practical experience to be able to survive out there at all. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
Also, I see I've piqued people's interest now with that. I can't say the whole story on streams. I'm not really sure what was going on with this, but apparently we had a visit from a very controversial YouTuber that I'm pretty sure everybody in this chat will know. So I'm not sure what they were doing here or not. I'm not sure if they were just maybe just passing through and watching, or they had a reason for showing up. But I'll be very curious to see what that was all about. I'll have to tell the Enforcer about it later. But it was a very interesting YouTuber. But anyways, moving on here.
What? It's
What
fine.
happened?
It's nothing. It's nothing. You cut out for
I
literally
can't
like
believe it.
2
We haven't had
seconds.
lag all night. Like, it was only like for a split second here. That's actually a blessing.
I'll be honest with you, man. We've actually been pretty blessed tonight. Pretty blessed. Like, we fixed the problem, man. We did it. We finally cracked the code. But with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
So this one goes to, let's see here, Tyler Quick, who said, do you believe Russia would be asking to come to the aid of North Korea in return for sending troops to Ukraine?
Russia would be asked to come to North Korea. I don't think so. Because actually what I'm thinking is that the North Koreans are sending these soldiers probably to get some sort of support and aid in return, because the North Koreans want to get all the aid that they used to get back in the day when the Soviet Union and China existed, and a way to do that might actually be just to help the Russians this way, so that way they can get the aid streams flowing from China and Russia again, and hopefully start to recover their economy. Because one thing that people always say is that North Korea is dirt poor, but what's actually crazy is that North Korea is doing better now than it has since about the 70s, which is really weird. Like, they're still starving, like, to let me put that out there, but at least as far as the quality of life goes, it's actually starting to improve a little bit, because Kim Jong-un actually puts an emphasis not on just on military spending alone. He actually puts a decent emphasis on consumer and domestic goods, which is literally a first in North Korea. No one else ever did that. He's really the first. So the quality of life is starting to slightly improve, and it may be Kim Jong-un's plan that if he's able to get further Russian aid, he's able to really jumpstart this a good deal and possibly start to make a pretty decent trading relationship with the Russian Federation and China, and kind of move away from the completely self-sufficient ideology that Juche has laid out since the beginning of the Republic of Korea, well, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who was the lucky last person that threw in the lucky last question of the night?
All right, and it's actually from a longtime channel legend. It's Duncan VR, and I promised him I would bring this up because he did not put any animal noises in tonight. I thanked him for that. I exchanged it to call out a request to bring out the fly and the marmot. So could we please bring out the marmot?
No. Man, you kidding me, man. Is that time? Is that time, man? Oh my goodness, we haven't done this
Bring
in
him out.
years.
Bring him out.
Oh, hello there.
Oh, hello there, Governor. How you doing, good sir? Welcome back. Welcome back. Well, we have the fly down here. He's still getting stale down here. In fact, he's in the red. He's going quite red. So it's worse than the Evergrande crisis. He's losing so much. Oh, terrible, terrible things. But anyways, Fat Tail, Enforcer, tell us more.
Aw, man, life isn't good for me. Aw, man.
That's a shocker.
There goes another 100. Aw, man, I've got to
Damn,
tell
slap me silly. I'm shocked by this revelation.
Aw, man, I'm going to make another hit piece. Aw, man, the world tremors when a nice guy loses his cool. Aw,
Oh, damn, he's losing his cool.
I'll
He's
tell
losing his
you.
cool and losing his subs.
I'll tell you something. I might start running 90-hour-long streams, and I might lose some subs and all my money. But I'll tell you this, I'll still come out on top because I'm an absolute hustler. Now let me go
That's
put in
true.
let me go quit on the spot for my hot dog job at the carnival, because I'm not that kind of a hustler though. Like it's like
Oh, yeah. He may lose some subs, but he'll also. Yeah, that's right. He has no dignity left. He'll lose everything. He's losing it all. There's nothing to save.
You know, Matthew, if anyone in the entire YouTube sphere was like North Korea, it's Hot Dog Man. You know, because he is in charge of a dying and crippled regime. You know, think about it. He absolutely spews out some of the stupidest shit you've ever heard, like North Korean propaganda. And whenever he's in a crisis, he just starts to attack anyone and everyone around him, with his main target being the evil imperialist Americans, which is us. Like, it's like, when you think about it, this guy is literally a Kim.
And isn't it ironic how he's like a democratic freedom fighter when he's literally employing the same methods as evil dictators around the world? Oh man, I want to fight against Putin, but at the same time I want to use his methods. Oh, I'm so conflicted. It's so wrong, but so right.
Man, or better yet, he's like, oh, I hate Putin and everything he's attached to, but I love the proxy forces that are supported by the Russians to Iran, and then Iran runs them. I absolutely love these people. They're so good. Aw, man.
Oh man, do you want to know Hot Dog Man's take on an issue? Think of the logical answer and flip it on its head. There you go.
Aw, man. And he keeps on saying that he's pro-Ukraine, but I've seen that start to crack lately because he's just not making enough money off of that, so you can see that he's moving on to other things. And one day he might flip because he'll be thinking that might make me more money. Aw, man.
Oh man.
Is it better now?
Never will be.
Aw, man. But
never say never.
And I'll do it again.
Don't make me do it. No more Mr. Nice Guy.
Man, and then he sits there. Wait, hang on, man. Let me get that dog with a mask meme. Dog with mask meme. Oh, sorry if y'all can hear that in the mic. I just burped right there in case y'all didn't know. But anyways, moving on from that. This is what he felt like, Matthew, when he posted that thing on Twitter. Be ready to backstab everyone.
He said, just burn your bridges. If someone's not taking your side, whether you're right or wrong, just burn the bridge. Prepare a HIMARS and take it out. that life goal and life lesson right there, that's worked so well for him. That's why he's losing subs by the daily and his channel's failing. Follow that advice, people. Always follow that advice.
Oh, man, but dude, this is literally the Hot Dog Man in his own head right there, man. He's like, oh, man, the world shivers when a nice guy loses his cool, or something like that. Oh, my Lord.
Jamal. Put away the 9. Put away the 9.
Man, and this is also how his viewers are, man. Like, his viewers whenever we get doxxed or something. Oh, man, they be coming up with the most heinous stuff, death threats and everything. And you know what's crazy? None of them have followed through on it. And so it's always funny to get a little laugh out of that, but nevertheless, we love to see the marmot. The marmot's always an incredible thing, and I thank you so much, Duncan VR, for wanting us to wrap up our stream tonight by taking a look at a little marmot. And so with that, we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to thank each and every single one of y'all for watching tonight and getting this fundraiser up to where it is. I think it's very close to 4,000. I can't actually see it right now, so I'm taking a rough shot at that. But nevertheless, over the course of the stream, we have reached a peak viewership of exactly 10,000 viewers. And over the course of the stream, 80,000 people have watched this stream from beginning to end. I've got to thank you all so much once again for being here with us tonight and really enjoying this channel and hopefully enjoying the news that we have covered. And if y'all did, and I hope that y'all did, please do consider subscribing. We have hit 290,761 subscribers as of right now. We're actually getting really close to hitting 291,000 subscribers, meaning that we'll have gained about 2,000 subscribers just today. And welcome to that whole new brigade of the LSA that has just joined in one whole day. We'll, of course, see you all tomorrow. Not on a stream. Of course, we always take Mondays off on streams, but we will see y'all on Tuesday to cover the next 48 hours of the war. And I will also be seeing y'all tomorrow as well to make another short war summary, hopefully if there's enough news. But with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And with that, folks, once again, huge shout out for helping us to once again breach the $3,000 fundraising goal for another Sunday, and it's all thanks to the LSA. So a huge shout out to you all for that. And also, be sure to join the Enforcer tomorrow for a short war video. I'll be seeing you all once again on the Tuesday video and also the nightly stream as well. So be sure to join us then on Tuesday night at the usual time. But with that, Slava Ukraine, Heroam Slava, get some rest, and good night.
Yes. The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
What?